Hello, curious minds, and welcome to Documentary for Sleep. If you've clicked on this video, maybe you're lying in bed trying to quiet your thoughts after a long day, or maybe you just want a calm companion in the background while cooking, working, or letting the night settle in. Wherever you are, this is your moment to slow down. Tonight, we're not diving into fantasy, but into something deeply human. Laughter. That sudden, strange sound our bodies make when joy, surprise, or even nervousness takes over. Why do we laugh? And more importantly, how did this peculiar habit shape who we are as a species? This channel is all about soft science, grounded in anthropology, archaeology, and evolutionary biology, told gently, without the noise of speculation. We don't have every answer, but we do have the questions, the research, and the stories. And if you happen to drift off halfway through, that's perfectly fine. I've left timestamps in the description so you can pick up where you left off tomorrow. If this kind of quiet, long-form storytelling helps you relax, learn, or just breathe a little easier, consider liking and subscribing. It helps this channel reach more curious sapiens like you. And if you feel like sharing, tell us, where do you listen? In bed before sleep, during a night shift, or somewhere across the world in silence? And as always, stay curious, stay calm. Imagine a newborn infant, a creature of pure potential, who has yet to form a single word, comprehend a symbol, or be shaped by any culture. Yet, this infant can laugh, a true, gurgling, breathless laugh that erupts from a place deeper than reason. And this sound, this peculiar exhalation, can leap from the child to an adult, triggering an identical, involuntary response. No shared language is required, no explanation is needed. Why? What is this strange, contagious power we possess long before we possess anything else? The answer begins not in the mind, but in the body. Laughter is a neurological symphony, a full-body event that lights up the brain like a city awakening. It begins in the sophisticated prefrontal cortex, the seat of our conscious understanding, where a joke is decoded or a situation is recognized as play rather than threat. This signal then cascades into the ancient limbic system, the raw core of our emotions, sparking the feeling of joy or relief. Finally, the command rockets through the brainstem to a chaotic orchestra of motor functions. The diaphragm convulses, facial muscles contort into that universal rictus, and the larynx produces a series of staccato, vowel-like bursts. It is a biological marvel, this coordinated spasm that serves no immediate physical need like eating or fleeing. It is an expenditure of precious energy for a seemingly abstract purpose. This intricate wiring suggests it is not a frivolous accident, but a deeply ingrained, fundamental part of our operating system. If we could build a time machine that recorded sound, what would we hear echoing through the ancient landscapes? We would find the stone tools of Homo erectus, the charred bones of their fires, but no fossilized laughter. Unlike a hand axe, a laugh leaves no trace in the sediment. Yet, its universality is its archaeology. Every human culture, from the most isolated tribal societies to the most technologically advanced urban centers, knows laughter. More tellingly, every human can instinctively detect its counterfeit, the hollow social politeness laugh versus the genuine uncontrollable eruption. This deep shared recognition points to an evolutionary history, far predating the complexities of modern language. It is a behavioral fossil, preserved not in stone but in our very DNA, suggesting that our ancestors were laughing long before they were debating. This presents a curious paradox. If laughter is so neurologically complex and evolutionarily ancient, why do we relegate it to the sidelines of human communication? Why do we consider spoken language, with its precise grammar and vast vocabulary, the pinnacle of our development? Language can lie, can obfuscate, can build walls of misunderstanding. But genuine laughter is a moment of profound pre-linguistic truth. It bypasses the intellect and forges an immediate visceral bond between individuals. It is a signal that requires no translation. Perhaps then, laughter is not the lesser cousin of language, but its precursor, It is the original social glue. Before words for safe or friend existed, a laugh could communicate all of that and more. In the dangerous world of our ancestors, a shared laugh at a missed step or a clumsy attempt to grasp fruit could have instantly diffused tension, signaling that a moment of peril was actually a moment of harmless folly. It was a rapid, efficient way to switch the tribe's mood from alertness to relaxation, from predator to playmate. It reinforced social bonds stronger than any verbal contract could. So, if laughter was the first language, what were our ancestors trying to say before they could even speak? What ancient stories of survival and connection were told not with words, but with this spontaneous, joyful noise? And if this is true, does the echo of that primordial signal still linger in our modern chuckle, a ghost of a connection forged on the African savanna? 2 million years ago, on the sun-baked savannas of Pleistocene Africa, a band of Homo erectus gathers. They cannot speak. They have no words for danger, tomorrow, or kinship. Yet, as the day's heat begins to soften, a scene unfolds. A young one stumbles playfully. An older individual makes a soft, rhythmic panting sound. The tension of a long hunt seems to dissolve. Did laughter, this most human of sounds, exist before language itself? And if it did, what purpose did it serve in a world without words? The brain of Homo erectus was a formidable instrument for its time. Significantly larger than that of its ancestors, it possessed the neural architecture for complex social emotions. We know the basic wiring for laughter is ancient, buried deep within the subcortical regions of the brain, the same areas that govern fundamental urges like fear and hunger. In our primate cousins, like chimpanzees, we observe a breathy panting during playful chases, a clear precursor to our own laughter. This suggests the hardware was already in place, a latent capacity waiting to be used. It was a brain capable of feeling the release of tension, the spark of shared understanding, even if it could not articulate it. Archaeology will never unearth a fossilized chuckle, but it reveals patterns of behavior that whisper of a profound social need. Homo erectus hunted large game, a dangerous endeavor requiring coordination and trust. They shared food, an act that demands a mechanism to diffuse the potential conflict over resources. They cared for their injured, indicating empathy. In such a tightly knit social world, a sophisticated system of nonverbal communication would have been essential. A grin, a certain posture, a specific vocalization, these could signal, "I am friendly," "this is play," or "the threat has passed," long before a symbolic word was ever conceived. Laughter, in this light, emerges not as a frivolous byproduct of intelligence, but as a vital social tool. It was the glue that held the group together, a primitive language of bonding written in the breath. We still carry this ancient legacy within us. Think of a moment of sudden shared relief. A near accident is avoided, and before anyone can say, "That was close," laughter bubbles up. It's a collective exhale, a neural reset. This instinctual response, often awkward and wordless, feels like an echo from a distant past. It is the ghost of a communication system that once ruled our social lives, a remnant of a time when a sound could do the work of 1,000 sentences. It bridges the gap between pure emotion and deliberate speech, a fundamental social instinct that we have never outgrown. Yet, a counterargument lingers. Could this early laughter have been anything more than simple emotional noise? A mere reflex, like a cry of pain, lacking the complexity to convey specific meaning? If it was just an involuntary spasm, a leftover from our animal past, then it could hardly be considered a true form of communication. Perhaps it was little more than a social lubricant, a way to smooth interactions without the precision of language. This view reduces laughter to a biological accident, a quaint tick of our nervous system that we have since Fu Eula with undue significance. The question then is not merely whether Homo erectus could laugh, but what that laughter meant. To find an answer, we must look beyond the fossil record and into the living world, to our closest relatives. For in the tumbling playfights of young primates, we might just hear the faint, breathy origins of what would become our own joy, our own irony, our own most human connection. If laughter was the first social contract, written not in words but in sound, what does its enduring power tell us about what we truly need from each other? The young chimpanzee, caught in the whirlwind of a mock battle, stumbles and falls. For a split second, the play fight teeters on the edge of reality. The larger chimp stands over him, muscles tensed. Then a sound escapes the smaller one's lips. A panting, breathy hiccup. It is not a scream of fear, nor a snarl of aggression. It is something else entirely. Hearing it, the dominant chimp relaxes, its posture softening. The tension dissolves back into play. In that crucial moment, a laugh, or its ancient primate precursor, just diffused a potential disaster. This is not mere amusement. It is a biological signal etched into our DNA over millions of years. In the rough and tumble world of primates, play is essential for learning boundaries and building social bonds. But play can look alarmingly like a real fight. The laugh evolved as a vital piece of punctuation, a constant, reassuring whisper between the lines. This is not real. I am not a threat. We are still friends. Beneath the surface, a precise chemical ballet accompanies this signal. The body, primed for conflict, begins to lower its cortisol, the hormone of stress, and in its place releases a trickle of endorphins, the body's own opiates of comfort and connection. The laugh is a switch that changes the internal weather from a potential storm to a shared, sunny relief. Now, travel forward in time to our hominid ancestors gathered around a flickering fire. Survival was a group project, and the group was growing larger, more complex. In such close quarters, a misinterpreted gesture, a harsh word, a stolen glance, any of these could fester into a rift that might weaken the entire tribe. The stakes were existential. Here, the utility of that primal chuckle became profound. It was a social tool, a preemptive strike against misunderstanding. A laugh could smooth over an accidental shove, apologize for a clumsy remark, or signal acceptance after a minor transgression. It was a way to say, without words, we are still on the same side. In a world where isolation meant death, laughter was a low-cost, high-yield insurance policy for social survival. We carry this ancient legacy into our modern lives, often without realizing it. Think of the nervous chuckle that escapes during a tense job interview, or the relieved laughter that follows a near-miss collision on the sidewalk. In an awkward silence on a first date, a shared joke can feel like a lifeline. These are not moments of pure joy. They are sophisticated, unconscious peacekeeping strategies. We are deploying a tool crafted on the ancient savanna to navigate the abstract jungles of contemporary society. Our laughter is a ghost in the machine, a relic of a time when social cohesion was the difference between life and death. But if its primary purpose was simply to de-escalate conflict, to signal harmless intent, why does it possess such a peculiar, irresistible power to spread? Why does one person's laughter so often trigger another's, creating a cascade of sound that binds a room together in a shared moment? This question nudges us toward a deeper truth. Laughter is more than a social lubricant. It is a social glue. It does not merely prevent fights. It actively builds trust. The very act of laughing together, the synchronized exhalations, and the shared release of endorphins forges a palpable bond. It creates a tiny, temporary tribe within a room, a fleeting community united by a common rhythm. Could it be that this capacity to rapidly, almost magically strengthen social ties through a shared vocalization was the secret weapon that allowed human groups to scale up in size and complexity beyond that of any other primate? Is laughter the invisible architecture that holds our vast, intricate societies together, the evolutionary shield against the centrifugal forces of social conflict? And if so, what does it mean that this tool for unity can also, in a different tone, become a weapon for exclusion? Imagine a circle of 10 early humans gathered around a fire after a successful hunt. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of easy, rumbling laughter. a shared joke, a playful shove, a moment of collective relief. Now, stretch that circle. Expand it to 100 individuals, then 1,000. The fire's warmth no longer reaches everyone. The familiar faces are diluted by strangers. The same laughter that once bound the small group now feels different. It can echo with unease, fracture into nervous titters, or curdle into something sharper. Why is it that 10 people can find harmony, while 100 so often find conflict? And what invisible force, woven into our very biology, holds them back from tearing each other apart? The answer may lie not in a treaty or a law, but in a breathless, spasmodic, and profoundly human act: laughter. This is not the laughter of mere amusement, but something far deeper, an evolutionary shield against the inherent friction of social life. As human groups grew beyond tight-knit family units, a critical problem emerged. Larger groups offered immense advantages: better defense, more efficient hunting, a greater pool of knowledge. But this new scale of cooperation came with a terrifying price: the constant, simmering potential for internal violence. How could a species, equipped with the physical and emotional capacity for brutal conflict, keep itself from self-destructing? The solution was forged in the crucible of our need for one another, a biological and social compromise written in the language of a chuckle and a guffaw. On a biological level, laughter is a powerful chemical handshake. When social interactions intensify, particularly positive ones involving touch and vocalization, our bodies release a cascade of neurochemicals. Chief among them is oxytocin, often dubbed the bonding hormone or the moral molecule. This isn't just a poetic label. Oxytocin plays a crucial role in promoting trust, empathy, and generosity. It lowers the guard of the amygdala, the brain's fear center, making us feel safer among our peers. Laughter is one of its most potent and efficient triggers. A shared laugh is not merely an exchange of sound. It is a communal dose of a neurochemical elixir that whispers, "You are among friends. This is a safe place." It is a nonverbal pact, a way of recalibrating the nervous systems of an entire group toward a state of relaxed alertness instead of defensive paranoia. In the space between words, laughter builds a bridge of biology. The archaeological record hints at when this shield became essential. As our ancestors transitioned into more complex hunter-gatherer societies, their social worlds expanded dramatically. They were no longer interacting solely with a handful of immediate kin. They had to negotiate, collaborate, and coexist with a wider band of individuals, some of whom were relative strangers. In this delicate dance, a misinterpreted gesture or a contested resource could quickly escalate into lethal violence. Laughter likely emerged as a critical tool for de-escalation and social grooming on a massive scale. Unlike primates who spend hours picking lice from each other's fur to strengthen bonds, humans discovered a faster, more versatile method. A hearty laugh after a near accident on the hunt could diffuse tension and reaffirm solidarity. A playful giggle between children could ease potential conflicts between their parents. It served as a universal signal for all clear, establishing what anthropologists call a play frame, a temporary social space where actions are not meant to be taken as serious threats. In the precarious balance between the advantage of a large group and the risk of internal strife, laughter was the grease that kept the social machinery from grinding to a halt. This ancient function is on full display in our modern tribes. Observe a team of colleagues after a stressful project deadline has passed. The relief often manifests not in silent handshakes, but in an outburst of collective laughter, perhaps at a minor mistake made during the frenzy. In that moment, they are not just co-workers, they are survivors of a shared ordeal, and the laughter chemically reaffirms their bond. Within a circle of friends, inside jokes create a sonic fingerprint of belonging. A laugh that is incomprehensible to an outsider is a powerful marker of an in-group. On a grand scale, think of a political leader who begins a speech with a self-deprecating joke. It is a deliberate, calculated use of this ancient mechanism to project approachability and build rapport with a crowd of thousands. Laughter accomplishes what straightforward language often cannot. It bypasses the critical, analytical parts of our brain and speaks directly to our social, emotional core. It builds cohesion without the need for explicit promises or contracts. Yet, like any powerful tool, this evolutionary shield has a double edge. If laughter can build trust, can it not also be weaponized to break it? What of the laugh that is not shared but directed? The sneer, the scoff, the mocking cackle. This is the paradox at the heart of our social glue. The same physiological response that bonds a group can be twisted to define its boundaries with cruel precision, to exclude and to humiliate. A laugh of derision does not trigger oxytocin in its target. Instead, it floods them with cortisol, the stress hormone, marking them as an outsider, a threat to the group's cohesion. This is laughter not as a shield, but as a social club. It establishes a hierarchy by lowering the status of its target and elevating those who join in the mockery. The very mechanism designed to prevent conflict can, in a different context, become a primary instrument of social aggression. So, when does the sound of connection become the sound of conquest? Perhaps the key lies in the subtle dance of power and vulnerability. Intriguingly, laughter is often most bonding when it is directed at ourselves. The ability to laugh at our own stumbles, our own hubris, our own minor failures, is a profound social skill. It is a signal of self-awareness and humility. In evolutionary terms, it can be seen as a sophisticated display of non-threatening behavior. By laughing at our own mishap, we preemptively disarm potential aggression from others. We communicate, "I am not a danger. My mistake does not challenge your status." It transforms a moment of potential social risk into an opportunity for connection. The person who can laugh at themselves effectively neutralizes a threat before it can even form, turning a weakness into a strange kind of strength. This suggests that our evolution toward being a funny species may not have been solely about creating joy, but about a more pragmatic survival need. To de-escalate, to appease, to navigate the complex and dangerous waters of social hierarchy without coming to blows. We learned to laugh so that we would not have to fight. So, we are left with a creature whose greatest strength, complex social organization, is safeguarded by a reflex that is both unifying and divisive, generous and cruel. The laugh that seals a friendship and the laugh that wounds a spirit are branches from the same evolutionary root. They are two sides of the same coin, minted in the ancient forge of group survival. This leaves us with a question that echoes beyond the campfire and into the boardrooms and city squares of our modern world. If our instinct to laugh is so easily corrupted into a tool for exclusion, does our hope for a more cohesive society lie not in suppressing this ancient impulse, but in learning to wield its power with a more conscious grace? And what does it mean that our primary defense against ourselves is a sound so fragile, so easily misunderstood, and so perilously close to a cry? Of all the sounds we make, laughter is perhaps the most deceptive. We think of it as a burst of pure joy, an involuntary signal of delight. But watch closely. Watch when someone misses a step on the stairs, catching themselves just in time. Their face flushes, and then a sound escapes. Not a gasp of fear, but a short, sharp laugh. It's a curious reaction. There was no joke, no moment of happiness. There was only a stumble, a small public failure. So why do we laugh? The answer may lie not in a show of strength, but in a quiet, ancient signal of weakness. Consider the biology of that moment. The stumble is a sudden rupture in the social fabric. For a split second, the person who fell is a potential threat. In the ancient wiring of our primate brains, a sudden, uncontrolled movement can signal aggression, panic, or instability. It puts everyone on alert. The laughter that follows acts as a chemical and social coolant. It triggers the release of endorphins, not just in the laugher, but potentially in the witnesses, softening the edges of anxiety. The laugh is a biological white flag. It says, "My clumsy body is not a danger to you. See, I am already disarming the situation." It is a way to temporarily lower one's perceived threat level, to de-escalate a moment of social uncertainty before it can curdle into something else, pity, or worse, aggression. Could it be that our most joyful sound is, at its core, a sophisticated tool for appeasement? This instinct likely has roots deep in our prehistoric past, in the small, interdependent bands where our social instincts were forged. In a world of scarce resources, direct confrontation was a gamble. To constantly assert dominance was to invite a challenge. Survival often depended on a more nuanced dance, knowing when to stand tall and when to make oneself small. A hunter who returned empty-handed might shrug and laugh, diffusing the group's disappointment. A child reaching for food might giggle submissively before being given permission. In these contexts, laughter was a brilliant social lubricant. It was a way to acknowledge a mistake, a shortcoming, or a lower status without triggering a conflict. It broadcast a crucial message. I am not a rival for your position. I pose no challenge. Let us remain allies. The laugh was a clever, non-verbal strategy to maintain harmony by gracefully accepting a subordinate role. Is our modern embarrassment just a pale echo of a vital, ancient survival tactic? In our contemporary world, this ancient mechanism is everywhere, operating just beneath the surface of our interactions. We laugh nervously in a job interview after fumbling a question, hoping to recast our incompetence as endearing humanity. We chuckle awkwardly when we are criticized, using the sound to absorb the blow and show we are not taking it, or ourselves, too seriously. In a moment of profound embarrassment, when our face burns with shame, laughter is our first and best defense. It is a social reflex that serves multiple purposes. It is a shield against humiliation, a way to save face by appearing to be in on the joke, even when the joke is on us, and a bridge to reconnect with others after a faux pas. It preempts their judgment and invites them to join in our vulnerability. But in doing so, are we not simply performing a modern version of that same primal signal? A public demonstration that we recognize our own stumble in the social hierarchy? Yet, this explanation feels incomplete, like describing a coin by looking at only one side. If laughter is purely a signal of weakness, a tool for submission, how do we explain the cutting laugh of the bully? The controlled, mocking chuckle of a politician dismissing an opponent? The sharp, collective laughter of a group aimed at an outsider? This is not laughter that de-escalates. It is laughter that attacks. It does not lower the threat level of the person laughing. It raises it. It is a weapon, wielded to assert dominance, to draw boundaries, and to enforce social norms with brutal efficiency. So, where does this leave our understanding? If the same sound can be both a white flag and a battle cry, what does that say about the true nature of laughter? Perhaps the signal of weakness is itself a form of strength. By voluntarily displaying vulnerability, the individual seizes control of the narrative. They choose the terms of their own dissent, making it appear gracious rather than forced. In this light, the stumble and the subsequent laugh are not a surrender, but a subtle power play, a way to manage how others perceive our failures. But then where is the line between a disarming giggle and a dismissive snort? Between a laugh that builds connection and one that burns it to the ground? The sound is identical. The intention, worlds apart. So, we are left with a paradox. Laughter emerges from a place of social unease, a biological and historical impulse to say, I am no threat. Yet, in the human heart, every tool for connection can be reforged into a weapon. The very act of showing weakness can be a calculated show of strength. If laughter is the sound of our vulnerability, then is it not also the sound of our most ingenious social strategies? And if it can so effortlessly bridge the gap between prey and predator, between the weak and the powerful, what does that reveal about the thin, trembling line that separates the two? This duality forces a deeper question. What happens when this tool of appeasement is sharpened and aimed with purpose? When the laugh that was meant to soothe is used to slice? When the signal of weakness is twisted into an instrument of control? If the chuckle of the clumsy is a shield, then what is the nature of the laugh that is drawn like a sword? The comedian steps into the spotlight, a microphone their only prop. They don't tell a joke, not exactly. Instead, they offer a wry observation about a powerful figure, a twist of language that lays bare a hidden hypocrisy. A ripple starts in the audience, then swells into a wave of roaring laughter. This sound, so often a signal of joy, here feels different. It is sharp, unified, a collective release of recognition. In this moment, laughter is not merely amusement. It is an act of alignment, a social projectile. It is a soft weapon. This transformation of laughter from a simple reflex into a tool of social mechanics is a thread that runs deep into our biological past. When we laugh, our brain's reward system ignites, flooding us with a sense of well-being. This neurological event is not picky about the stimulus. It can be triggered by a puppy chasing its tail or by a perfectly aimed barb that confirms our own biases and judgments. The pleasure we feel when laughing at something we disapprove of is a potent reinforcer. It chemically bonds us to those who share our laughter, creating a sense of us. Simultaneously, it draws a bright, audible line around them, the subject of the joke. This is the ancient biology of coalition building. The laugh becomes a vocal grooming ritual, a way of saying, "I am with you, and we are not with that." Could this pleasurable fire in our brain be the very engine that has, for millennia, turned mirth into a means of marking territory within the human tribe? Long before comedy clubs and political cartoons, our ancestors gathered around fires, and the stories told they were not just for entertainment. Anthropologists suggest that satire and ridicule were fundamental tools for maintaining social order in early hunter-gatherer bands. In a group where survival depended on cooperation, direct physical confrontation over every minor transgression was costly and dangerous. How then to police the freeloader, the rule breaker, the boastful liar? The answer was often a story, a clever impersonation, a joke that exposed the individual's folly without throwing a single punch. The resulting laughter was a powerful, non-lethal sanction. It shamed the offender, yes, but more importantly, it publicly revealed the breach of social contract to the entire group. The individual was not expelled or wounded, but was momentarily isolated by the sound of their peers' collective judgment. This laughter was a corrective force, a way of sanding down the rough edges of individuality to maintain the smooth functioning of the whole. Was this the original courtroom, where the jury's verdict was delivered not with a gavel, but with a gust of unifying sound? In our modern, hyper-connected world, this ancient tool has been amplified to a staggering degree. The satirist on stage is joined by 1 million meme creators, cartoonists, and writers who wield irony as their primary language. A viral meme can dismantle a political argument more effectively than a 1,000-word essay. The laughter it generates is a form of indirect social aggression, a way of exerting cultural pressure that is difficult to counter. To respond with anger is to reveal a lack of humor, to be the butt of the joke all over again. This form of attack is soft, leaving no physical scars, but it can reshape public opinion, destroy reputations, and steer the course of conversations on a global scale. The digital town square echoes with the sound of this laughter, a weaponized echo of our ancestral firesides. But if this laughter is indeed a weapon, why is it that some who wield it masterfully are beloved, seen as witty and insightful, while others are dismissed as cruel or cynical? What separates the court jester from the village bully? This paradox leads us to a crucial refinement of our idea. The power of laughter as a weapon is not absolute. Its effectiveness is deeply intertwined with the social position of the one who laughs. A joke told from the margins carries a different weight than the same joke told from the center of power. The beloved satirist often operates from a perceived place of shared vulnerability or clever observation, their barbs feeling like a defense of the group's values. Their laughter invites us in. In contrast, the bully's laugh often comes from a place intended to dominate and exclude, to reinforce a hierarchy rather than to question it. The sound is the same, but the social context gives it a completely different meaning. The laugh itself is neutral. Its moral charge is bestowed upon it by the complex web of relationships in which it is uttered. So, if the laugh is the bullet, Is social standing the gun that determines its force and trajectory? This question naturally pulls our gaze further back, to the very origins of social structure itself. In the small, intimate bands of our deep past, where every relationship was face-to-face and survival was a daily negotiation, social capital was as critical as physical strength. The individual who could make others laugh held a unique form of power. They were not necessarily the strongest hunter, but they might be the one who could diffuse tension with a well-timed joke, or unite the group through a shared story. This ability to orchestrate laughter granted them influence, a soft power. It made them valuable, accepted, and therefore more likely to thrive. Their wit was a currency that could be spent to build alliances, gain favor, and navigate the delicate ranks of the tribe. In this light, laughter begins to look less like a simple weapon and more like a fundamental tool of social navigation. It is the instrument through which status is subtly tested, affirmed, and challenged. Could it be that the hierarchy of an ancient tribe was not just a ladder of strength, but also an invisible architecture of mirth, built laugh by laugh? And if so, what does that tell us about the quiet power of the jester in the modern court of public opinion? In a hunter-gatherer tribe, the individual who holds the group's attention around the evening fire might not be the strongest hunter or the most skilled tracker. It is the storyteller, the one who can weave a tale that ends in a burst of collective laughter. This person, armed not with a spear but with a well-timed punchline, often holds a subtle yet significant power. They have many allies, their opinion carries weight, and their social standing is curiously high. Why is this? Why does the ability to provoke a spontaneous, involuntary physiological response, a laugh, translate into such palpable social capital? It suggests that laughter is far more than a simple reaction to amusement. It is a complex social tool, deeply woven into the fabric of hierarchy and alliance. The foundation of this power lies not in culture, but in our very biology. A skilled humorist is a master of social intelligence. To craft a joke that lands, to tell a story that delights, requires an exquisite sensitivity to the emotional landscape of the room. It demands the ability to read micro-expressions, the flicker of confusion, the hint of anticipation, the subtle shift in posture. The humorist must then modulate their tone, their timing, and their own expression to guide the audience toward the precipice of release. This is a high-wire act of cognitive and emotional control. The brain regions involved, those handling language, executive function, and emotional processing, light up in a coordinated dance. In this sense, a good joke is a sophisticated neurological feat, a sign of a nimble and empathetic mind. It signals to the group, this individual understands us, can predict our reactions, and can orchestrate our collective mood. Is this not a form of intelligence as valuable, in its own way, as the capacity to plan a hunt? This biological capacity finds its echo in the archaeological record, not in bones and stones, but in the living laboratories of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, which offer a window into our shared past. In these groups, where survival depends on tight-knit cooperation, the individual with a well-developed sense of humor often plays a crucial role. They are the social lubricant, diffusing tensions that arise from close-quarter living and the constant pressures of survival. A well-aimed joke can ease the sting of a failed hunt, or gently mock a member who is hoarding resources, correcting social imbalances without the violence of a direct confrontation. This person becomes a de facto leader, not by decree, but by consensus. Their influence is a soft power, built on the ability to unite, to heal, and to inspire loyalty. The group that laughs together, it seems, stays together. The laughter around the fire is a sound of bonding, a vocalization of trust and shared identity. Could it be that the first tribal councils were not solemn meetings, but gatherings punctuated by laughter? The modern corporate boardroom or university department is a world away from the ancestral fire, yet the same ancient dynamics play out, albeit in suits and ties. Here, the individual who can wield strategic laughter commands a distinct advantage. This is not the slapstick of a comedian, but a more refined instrument. A self-deprecating joke can disarm a rival and make a leader seem more approachable. A witty observation can expose the flaw in a complicated argument more effectively than a dry rebuttal. Laughter builds alliances, creating informal networks of influence that often bypass official hierarchies. It is a currency of belonging. Those who are included in the laughter are inside the circle. Those who are not are on the outside. This strategic laughter is the civilized descendant of the tribal jester's art, a way to navigate the complex social ladder without the overt use of force. But if laughter is so deeply entwined with social maneuvering and adult power structures, a paradox emerges, one embodied in the most innocent of all sounds, the giggle of an infant. A baby, just a few months old, will laugh with utter abandon. They laugh at a peekaboo game, at a funny face, at the simple joy of bouncing on a knee. They do this long before they understand social status, hierarchy, or the nuanced rules of their culture. They have not learned the art of the strategic joke. So, why do they laugh? This simple fact challenges the neat narrative of laughter as a purely cultivated social tool. It pulls the thread, suggesting that the sophisticated social instrument we see in adults is built upon a much more primal, fundamental foundation. The baby's laugh is a pure signal, untainted by ambition or calculation. It is an instinctual call and response, a basic building block of human connection. This forces us to reconsider, is our adult laughter merely a complex layer painted over this ancient, instinctual core? Have we simply learned to weaponize a primal language of joy? This question opens a fascinating possibility. Perhaps laughter is not something we learn from society, but a fundamental part of our biological operating system, a pre-installed software that boots up at birth. It is a universal human trait, appearing across all cultures, in all children, regardless of their upbringing. Before we learn to speak the specific words of our tribe, we speak the universal language of laughter. It is one of our first true forms of communication, a way to connect with our caregivers that transcends vocabulary. It signals well-being, invites play, and forges the deepest of all bonds, the bond between parent and child. In this light, the tribal storyteller and the corporate executive are not creating something new. They are tapping into a deep, ancestral well. They are harnessing a primal force of connection and bending it to the subtle purposes of the social world. The laugh of the infant and the chuckle of the king may be closer kin than we think. But if laughter is this ancient, this instinctual, why does it not fade away as we grow older and more sophisticated? Why does this childish relic persist with such power, structuring our most adult of pursuits? What if the laughter of our infancy is not a relic to be outgrown, but the very bedrock upon which all our complex social structures are built? The sound is unmistakable, a sudden, gurgling burst of pure, uncalculated joy. It comes from a human infant, perhaps only 4 months old. They have not yet been taught the rules of social engagement, have no words to label the sensation, no cultural context for what is happening. An adult gently tickles their belly, or a brightly colored cloth vanishes behind a hand only to reappear a moment later with an exaggerated peekaboo, and the child laughs. It is a reflex, as innate as grasping a finger or turning toward the scent of milk. How does this tiny, untaught being know to laugh? What ancient pre-linguistic knowledge is encoded in that spontaneous sound? This is not a learned behavior. It is a biological birthright. The neural architecture for laughter is present in the brainstem and limbic system, regions so ancient they are sometimes called the lizard brain. These are the circuits of immediate, unthinking reaction, the gasp of surprise, the jerk of fear, the sigh of contentment. Laughter resides here, among these primal responses. It is a physiological event. The diaphragm spasms. Breath comes in short, sharp bursts. The vocal cords vibrate with a rhythmic, non-verbal song. In our evolutionary past, long before Homo sapiens walked the savanna, the precursors to this laughter likely existed in the playful tussles of our primate cousins. A young chimp, chased by its mother, will pant with a distinctive, breathy sound, a proto-laughter that strengthens social bonds and signals harmless intent. Our own laughter, then, is not a human invention, but an inheritance, a deeply woven thread in the fabric of our mammalian being. Imagine for a moment a scene from deep time. A small band of early humans gathers in the relative safety of a rock shelter at dusk. The fire crackles, warding off the chill and the predators lurking in the darkness beyond. An infant, cradled in its mother's arms, gurgles with delight as an older sibling makes a funny face. That sound, that simple, contagious expression of delight would have rippled through the group, a tiny beacon of safety and connection. In a world dominated by the immediate threats of hunger and predation, the laughter of a child was a powerful signal. It meant that here, in this moment, all was well. It reinforced the bond between caregiver and child, a nonverbal communication far more potent than any cry. It said, "I am safe with you. We are safe together." This sound predated language by millennia. Before we could use words to describe trust or loyalty, we had laughter to perform it. Was this the original social glue, the first melody in the symphony of human community? In our modern complex societies, this ancient legacy remains utterly central. A baby's first social smile, followed soon after by their first laugh, is a developmental milestone celebrated by parents and pediatricians alike. It is the infant's first true foray into a two-way emotional exchange, a sign that a cognitive and emotional connection is being forged. This laughter is not frivolous. It is fundamental. It teaches cause and effect. I do this, and you respond with joy. It builds the foundational layers of empathy and social understanding. Through the simple, rhythmic game of peekaboo, the child learns a profound philosophical lesson about object permanence and the gentle, thrilling drama of disappearance and return. The laughter that accompanies it is the reward, the chemical confirmation that the world, though sometimes surprising, is ultimately benevolent. In this way, the cradle of laughter rocks the very foundations of our cognitive and emotional selves. Yet this presents a puzzle, a quiet paradox nestled within our biology. If laughter is a primitive pre-linguistic tool, a crude instrument for signaling safety and bonding, then why does it persist so powerfully in us as adults? We have developed the most sophisticated communication system on the planet, language. We can articulate complex emotions, draft treaties, write poetry, and explain the laws of physics. Why hasn't this elegant, precise tool rendered the simple, snorting, uncontrollable burst of laughter obsolete? Why does a well-told joke, a slip on a banana peel in a silent film, or a moment of shared absurd recognition reduce us to a state of helpless, tear-filled glee that bypasses our cortex entirely and speaks directly to that ancient childlike self? Perhaps it is because language, for all its power, is also a tool of separation. It can obfuscate, lie, and create distance between what we feel and what we say. Laughter, in its beautiful, involuntary simplicity, remains a truth-teller. It is a sudden communal revelation of understanding, a synchronized recognition of an incongruity that language alone cannot fully capture. It bridges the gap between the individual and the group in an instant, creating a moment of pure, shared being. It is the legacy of the child in the forest, a reminder that beneath the layers of civilization and sophistication, we are still creatures who need to signal, quickly and unmistakably, that in this moment the threat is gone, the surprise is harmless, and we are, together, safe. So, if laughter is the universal, instinctual language, what then is the first story we learn to tell with it? The step from laughter to the joke is deceptively small. It begins with that fundamental appreciation for the harmless surprise. The peekaboo game is, in essence, the first joke a human ever understands. The face is there, then it is gone, violating expectation, then it returns, resolving the tension in a wave of relief and delight. The brain rewards this successful navigation of cognitive incongruity with a cascade of endorphins, the very same chemicals that promote bonding and well-being. For our ancestors, this mechanism may have been the seed of abstract thought. What if the first joke was not a spoken pun, but a shared glance. After a narrow escape from danger, a collective release of tension that acknowledged the fragility of life with a defiant chuckle. In that moment, the mind is not just reacting to the world, it is playing with it. It is holding two conflicting ideas, danger and safety, expectation and violation, and finding pleasure in their resolution. This ability to create and resolve cognitive tensions safely within the mind's own playground could be seen as humanity's first laboratory. The joke, in its most primitive form, became a space to explore the boundaries of the predictable and the absurd, to test social rules by gently breaking them, and to process the inherent anxieties of a dangerous world through the safety of narrative. The playful chase of a child mimics the predator-prey dynamic, but the laughter that follows signals it is only a game. This is a profound leap, the capacity to simulate experience, to learn and bond not through direct dangerous confrontation, but through a shared symbolic act. Was the evolution of humor, then, not merely a social pastime, but a critical cognitive adaptation? Did the ability to laugh at a simulated misfortune pave the way for planning, for storytelling, for the resilience to face real misfortune? If laughter was the cradle of our social being, was the joke the first tool that allowed us to consciously sculpt our understanding of the world, and in doing so, to begin the long, slow journey from creature to creator? What deeper truths might we uncover if we listen not to the words of our oldest stories, but to the laughter that must have echoed between them? Imagine a scene, simple and ancient. A group of early humans huddle around a fire, the darkness beyond the circle of light alive with unseen threats. The air is thick with the weight of survival. Then, one of them begins to speak, not of danger or of hunting plans, but of a story. It's a tale of a hunter so clumsy he mistakes his own shadow for a rival, or a berry gatherer so clever she outwits a bear with a riddle. The story takes an unexpected turn, a twist that defies logic in a harmless, delightful way. And then, it happens. A sound breaks the tension, a collective rhythmic exhalation we call laughter. This was not merely entertainment, it was perhaps one of our first and most vital technologies. A joke is a peculiar little artifact of the human mind. It is a story that sets up a pattern, a comfortable path for our thoughts to travel, only to suddenly yank the rug out from under them. The punchline is a violation of our expectations, but a safe one. There is no real tiger in the room, only the drawing of a tiger with the head of a rabbit. Our brains, exquisitely tuned to detect patterns and anomalies for survival, receive a double signal. The initial part of the joke establishes a neural pathway, a prediction of what comes next. The punchline creates a cognitive glitch, a moment of dissonance where the prediction fails. But instead of triggering a fear response, the brain's prefrontal cortex quickly assesses the situation and concludes there is no threat. This resolution, this sudden solving of a miniature puzzle, triggers a cascade in the brain's reward system. A wave of endorphins, those natural opioids, floods our system. It's a neurological reward for being tricked, for successfully navigating a harmless incongruity. We are, in essence, getting a chemical high from a controlled cognitive failure. Is laughter, then, the brain's way of congratulating itself on a problem well solved, even if the problem was entirely manufactured? This neurological dance suggests a deep evolutionary history. While we have no fossil records of the first punchline, we can infer its origins from the archaeological record of our sociality. With the emergence of complex language in Homo sapiens, we gain the ability not just to describe the world, but to manipulate it with symbols. The joke may have been a crucial byproduct of this new power. In a tribe's daily life, understanding social nuance and abstract thinking was as critical as understanding how to craft a spear. A well-timed joke, a playful tease, or a story with a twist acted as a social litmus test. Did the listener grasp the double meaning? Could they follow the leap of logic? This shared moment of getting it strengthened social bonds, creating an in-group of those who understood the abstract play. It was a way of practicing cognitive flexibility, of stretching the mind's ability to see the world from multiple angles without the high stakes of a real-life conflict. The ability to create and appreciate humor became a marker of intelligence and social aptitude. Could the survival of the wittiest have been just as important as the survival of the fittest? We see this developmental arc clearly in the journey of a child. A toddler's laughter is often physical. Peekaboo, the violation of the simple rule of object permanence in a safe, predictable way. But as the mind matures, so does the humor. The moment a child grasps their first pun, or understands the irony in a cartoon, is a significant cognitive milestone. It signals the blossoming of a theory of mind, the understanding that others have beliefs and perspectives different from one's own, and the ability to engage in abstract, symbolic thought. In adulthood, humor evolves into a sophisticated tool of emotional intelligence. It is a social radar. The jokes a person tells, and more importantly, the jokes they understand, reveal their empathy, their worldview, and their place within a social hierarchy. A self-deprecating joke can diffuse tension and display humility. A witty observation can challenge authority without direct confrontation. To navigate the complex web of human relationships, the ability to wield and interpret humor is a form of high-stakes social calculus. Is our sense of humor, then, not just a reflection of our intelligence, but the very lens through which we negotiate our social reality? Yet, this brilliant social tool has a sharp edge. If humor is a mind laboratory for testing social boundaries, what happens when an experiment goes terribly wrong? The same mechanism that bonds an in-group can viciously exclude an out-group. A joke that hinges on a stereotype or punches down at a marginalized person is not a violation of harmless expectation. It is a reinforcement of a very real, harmful social hierarchy. The cognitive twist is still there. The endorphin rush may still occur for some, but it comes at the cost of another's dignity. The laboratory becomes a weapon. Furthermore, humor is deeply cultural, rooted in shared knowledge and context. A joke that lands perfectly in one culture can fall utterly flat or even cause grave offense in another. The same brain that delights in a safe incongruity can recoil when the violation feels too real, too close to a genuine threat or trauma. This duality forces a difficult question. If humor is a force for social cohesion, why is it also one of our most common sources of social friction and pain? Does its power lie precisely in this ambiguity, in its ability to tread the fine line between connection and cruelty? Perhaps the ultimate value of laughter and the joke is not in the moments of ease, but in the face of adversity. The biological benefits are tangible. Laughter releases endorphins, boosts immune function, and reduces stress hormones like cortisol. For our ancestors around that fire, and for people living through hardship today, this is not a trivial comfort. It is a biological survival strategy. A joke in a dire situation is an act of profound cognitive rebellion. It is the mind's refusal to be completely dominated by circumstance, a way of asserting that while the body may be trapped, the spirit can still play. It creates a small pocket of psychological safety where the rules of a harsh reality are temporarily suspended. In this light, the joke transforms from mere entertainment into a fundamental act of resilience. It is the cognitive equivalent of finding a patch of fertile ground in a barren landscape and planting a seed, not just for food, but for the simple, defiant beauty of the flower. So we are left with a paradox. This thing we call a joke, often dismissed as frivolous, appears to be a core component of our humanity, a biological, social, and cognitive Swiss Army knife. It exercises our brains, glues our societies together, and medicates our stress. Yet, it is a tool that can build up or tear down with equal force, its meaning shifting like sand beneath the waves of culture and context. It has no single truth, only a multitude of reflections. We use it to navigate the world, but perhaps its greatest function is to remind us that the map is not the territory, that reality is malleable, and that the most serious truths are often best approached through a side door left slightly ajar. If a joke is a miniature crisis followed by a cathartic release, then could it be that we practice this rhythm, this fall and rise, as a preparation for the larger, more serious crises of life? And if so, in a world increasingly fraught with real and complex dangers, is our sense of humor not a frivolous escape, but a vital rehearsal for a resilience we desperately need? In the soft, humid air of a Ugandan hospital, where the scent of antiseptic mingles with the dust, a different kind of medicine is being dispensed. It has no bitter taste, requires no prescription, and its delivery system is a volunteer clown with a red nose. They bend and twist, their gestures broad and silly, and the sound that follows is a fragile, rising tide of giggles from children whose small bodies are fighting diseases many of us only read about. The laughter seems to lighten the room, a temporary defiance of the grim reality of illness. But is this merely a psychological distraction, a fleeting moment of joy in a sea of pain? Or is the laughter itself, this most human of sounds, a genuine pharmacological agent, a medicine in the most literal biological sense? The answer begins not in the mind, but deep within the body's intricate chemical landscape. When we laugh, a real, belly-clutching, breath-stealing laugh, our internal pharmacy opens for business. The first compounds to flood the system are endorphins, the body's own homemade opioids. These molecules are nature's painkillers, washing through our neural pathways, dampening discomfort, and creating a gentle, euphoric haze. They are the reason a good laugh can make an aching back or a lingering headache momentarily fade into the background. Following close behind is dopamine, the celebrated messenger of the reward circuit. It sparks a feeling of pleasure and satisfaction, a chemical well done that reinforces the very act that triggered it. Simultaneously, laughter begins to dismantle the architecture of stress. The level of cortisol, the primary hormone associated with the frantic wear and tear of modern life, begins to drop. It's as if the body is telling the adrenal glands to stand down, that the emergency, for now, is over. Perhaps most remarkably, this internal shift seems to send a ripple effect through the immune system. Studies have shown an increase in the production of antibodies and the activity of T cells, the body's frontline soldiers against infection. In the context of a Ugandan hospital, or any place where resources are thin and stress is a constant companion, this isn't just a feel-good story. It's a measurable, physiological intervention. Could it be that this simple, involuntary act is a vital tool for survival that we carry within us, a birthright more potent than we ever imagined? To understand why such a mechanism would be woven into our biological blueprint, we must journey back through time, to the harsh landscapes where our ancestors struggled to survive. Life for early humans was a precarious balance between feast and famine, safety and danger. Imagine a small band of hunter-gatherers, huddled together after a failed hunt, their stomachs gnawing with hunger, the cold seeping into their bones. In such moments of collective despair, what force could possibly reverse the tide of demoralization? A shared joke, a funny story, a moment of slapstick comedy. These are not frivolities. They are social glue and physiological first aid. The laughter that follows would have triggered that same endorphin release, elevating the group's mood, strengthening social bonds, and fostering the resilience needed to try again tomorrow. It was a way to collectively lower cortisol levels, to conserve precious energy otherwise wasted on chronic stress. In a world without hospitals or pharmacies, laughter was a primary healthcare system, a tool for mental and physical recovery that required nothing but the presence of another human being. It turned a circle of individuals into a tribe, united not just by blood, but by a shared, healing joy. Is our need to connect through humor, then, an ancient echo of a survival strategy written into our very DNA? Modern clinical psychology has begun to codify what our ancestors knew instinctively. In sterile laboratories and therapy rooms, the power of laughter is being measured with scientific rigor. Laughter yoga sessions, where participants engage in voluntary laughter that often evolves into the genuine article, have shown significant reductions in symptoms of depression and anxiety. Patients recovering from surgery who are exposed to humorous stimuli, whether through films or visits from clowns, have demonstrated a measurable decrease in their perception of pain, and in some cases, a faster rate of healing. It appears the body does not distinguish much between a laugh born from genuine mirth and one that is self-induced. The physiological benefits cascade regardless. This suggests that laughter is not merely a symptom of well-being, but an active contributor to it, a lever we can learn to pull to influence our own internal state. In a society increasingly medicated for stress and pain, have we overlooked a tool that is both free and universally accessible? Have we outsourced our healing to external compounds, forgetting the sophisticated apothecary that resides within? This leads to a puzzling paradox. If laughter is such a powerful innate medicine, why do our pharmacies of mirth seem to run dry as we age? A child laughs hundreds of times a day, their world a constant source of wonder and absurdity. An adult is lucky to manage a few dozen genuine laughs. We are born with this incredible self-renewing resource, and then we systematically forget how to use it. The weight of responsibility, the pressure to be serious and productive, the slow accumulation of disappointments, they all conspire to build a dam against spontaneous joy. We become self-conscious, worried that our laughter might be too loud, too silly, or inappropriate. We ration our amusement as if it were a finite commodity rather than a renewable wellspring. What is it about the process of growing up that convinces us to abandon one of our most fundamental and effective mechanisms for self-repair? Is maturity, in part, a learned inability to heal ourselves through joy? Perhaps the answer lies in the structure of modern life itself, which often prizes individual achievement over communal bonding and silent productivity over raucous connection. We have created environments, open-plan offices, silent commutes, isolated suburban homes that are often hostile to the spontaneous outbreaks of laughter that once defined our social groups. The healing circle has been broken, replaced by the glowing rectangle of a screen. Yet the mechanism is not broken. It is merely dormant. It waits for the right conditions to reawaken. And it is in our most extreme moments, when social conventions are stripped away by raw emotion, that laughter makes its most surprising and profound appearances. Why is it, then, that at the edge of the abyss, in the solemn silence of a funeral home, a burst of laughter can sometimes feel like the most natural response in the world? The air in the Ghanaian village is thick, a physical weight of heat and humidity that seems to press the very color out of the sky. But it is the other weight, the one of collective grief, that truly stills the atmosphere. A coffin, vibrant and ornate, depicting the profession of the man within, rests at the center of the gathering. Then, the music starts, not a somber dirge, but a rhythmic, pulsing beat. A woman steps forward, her face glistening with tears that trace paths through the dust on her cheeks. She begins to dance, her movements a story of the life being celebrated. Another relative follows, and he begins to speak, but his words are not of loss or sorrow. He is telling a story, a funny, slightly embarrassing anecdote about the deceased. A ripple of laughter breaks through the crowd, hesitant at first, then growing into a full, resonant wave that seems to challenge the heaviness of the day. It is not a laughter of disrespect, but one that exists in a profound, paradoxical harmony with the tears. Why does joy insist on blooming in the very soil of despair? What ancient, stubborn part of our being demands this strange alliance between a chuckle and a sob? To understand this paradox, we must journey inward, into the labyrinthine corridors of the human brain. Grief is not a single emotion but a neurological storm, a cascade of stress hormones and neural firings that can overwhelm the system. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of our logic and reason, goes offline, hijacked by the primal alarm bells of the amygdala. In this state of heightened distress, the mind, in its desperate quest for equilibrium, can resort to a seemingly bizarre defense: absurdity. When reality becomes too painful, too stark to process linearly, the brain sometimes short-circuits. It finds a disconnect, an incongruity so vast that the only possible response is a laugh. This is not a laugh of joy, but a cognitive release valve, a biological spasm that momentarily frees the mind from the tyranny of its own pain. It is the same mechanism that causes nervous laughter in a tense meeting or an inappropriate joke at a moment of high anxiety. The brain, faced with an unacceptable reality, chooses to frame it as irrational, as a joke too dark to be true. Is laughter then simply the sound of a mind protecting itself from breaking? A physiological rebellion against the unbearable weight of finality? If this impulse is wired into our biology, its expression is etched into the deepest layers of our shared history. The modern Western conception of a funeral, a quiet, black-clad affair dominated by hushed tones and solemn faces, is a historical anomaly, not the rule. For much of human history and across countless cultures, death was a communal event that involved the full spectrum of human expression. Archaeologists studying Neolithic burial sites find not only evidence of ritualistic interment, but also remnants of feasts, musical instruments, and ochre pigments used for body paint. These artifacts whisper of gatherings that were likely noisy, emotional, and cathartic. In ancient Ireland, the tradition of the wake involved games, music, and storytelling, a final celebration to guide the soul to the other world. In Mexico, the Dia de los Muertos is a vibrant festival where death is not a somber end but a natural part of life's cycle, greeted with sugar skulls, marigolds, and playful calaveras poems. These traditions suggest that our ancestors understood something we have, in many ways, forgotten, that to truly honor a life, one must sometimes celebrate it with the same vigor with which one mourns its passing. Could it be that our distant predecessors saw death not as a wall, but as a doorway, and their laughter was simply the sound of a heartfelt, if tearful, farewell? This ancient understanding finds a powerful echo in the complexities of modern society. In an age where grief is often medicalized and privatized, seen as a process to be managed rather than an experience to be shared, the communal laughter at a funeral can be a radical act of psychological healing. It serves as a pressure release for collective trauma, a moment where a community, fractured by loss, can reaffirm its bonds. The shared joke about the deceased's terrible cooking or their lifelong obsession with a losing sports team is more than just a story. It is an act of remembrance that is profoundly human. It cuts through the sterile silence of loss and reclaims the person from the abstraction of death. It says, "We are not just mourning an ending. We are celebrating a unique, flawed, and wonderful life." This laughter becomes a language of acceptance, perhaps the most humane language we possess. It does not deny the reality of death, but rather insists on the enduring power of life and connection. In the face of the ultimate silence, is our laughter not the most defiant affirmation that we are still here, together? Yet, a counter-argument persists, a whisper of unease from the part of us that believes grief should be pure, unadulterated by such seemingly frivolous sounds. Is this laughter a misfire, a glitch in the social script? An inappropriate response that reveals a failure to grasp the gravity of the moment? Or could the very opposite be true? Perhaps the ability to laugh when everything seems lost is not a sign of weakness or disrespect, but the ultimate evidence of laughter's role as a tool of spiritual survival. It is a force more resilient than sorrow, a stubborn light that refuses to be extinguished. Biologically, it regulates our stress. Psychologically, it binds us together. Culturally, it carries the stories of who we were. In this light, the laugh at a funeral is not a deviation from the script of mourning. It is the very heart of it. It is the defiant, beautiful, and necessary proof that even in our darkest hours, the human spirit possesses an irrepressible need to seek light, to connect, and to affirm. Is sorrow the truest response to loss, or is the courage to laugh amidst it a far more profound victory? When our earliest ancestors huddled around a fire, the bones of a hard winter still fresh in their memory, they did more than just cook food and ward off predators. They began to speak, and in their stories, amidst tales of the hunt and warnings of danger, there were likely moments of humor. A clumsy fall, a foolish mistake, a playful exaggeration. Around that fire, on the ashes of their struggles, they laughed. This sound, echoing across the millennia, may be one of the first and most fundamental building blocks of what we now call culture. It was the moment we began to use narrative not just to record events, but to transform them, to alchemize fear into camaraderie and loss into memory. The laugh in the face of death is not a modern invention or a cultural oddity. It is a primordial echo. It is the sound of a species learning to carry its dead not as a burden, but as a story. And if culture begins with the stories we tell to make sense of our world, then does it not truly begin when we first find the strength to laugh into the abyss and hear, not an echo of emptiness, but the answering laughter of our tribe? For if we can find a reason to smile when standing at the edge of the grave, what other impossible light might we yet kindle from the darkness? The cold was a physical presence, a biting entity that seeped through animal hides and settled deep into the bones. Outside the flickering circle of firelight, the world was a void of black ice and the hungry cries of unseen predators. Inside, huddled together for warmth, was a small band of Homo sapiens. They were the survivors of a harsh season, their numbers thinned by hunger and the cold. The air smelled of wood smoke, damp earth, and human weariness. Then a story was told. A gesture was made, an exaggeration of a stumble during the day's hunt, a mimicry of a startled comrade. And from the depths of that collective exhaustion, a sound emerged, low at first, then rising, contagious. Laughter. It echoed against the cave walls, a stark, almost defiant counterpoint to the silence of the threatening night. Why? Why would a creature, perched on the precipice of survival, expend precious energy on an act that served no immediate practical purpose? This is not a question with a simple answer, but a journey into the very cradle of what makes us human. On a biological level, laughter is a paradox. It is a spasm, a series of sharp, staccato exhalations that seem to serve no function for an individual fighting for their life. Yet, when we peer into its mechanics, a profound logic emerges. Laughter is not a solitary act. It is a resonant event. Neurologically, it triggers a cascade of chemicals. The sound of laughter, even the mere anticipation of it, prompts the release of endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, and more importantly, oxytocin. This neuropeptide is the architect of social bonds, the chemical glue of trust and affiliation. In that primordial circle, huddled against the darkness, laughter was not frivolity. It was a silent, biological pact. It was a way of saying, without words, "We are in this together. Your survival is my survival." The shared chuckle over a near miss, the collective guffaw at a shared folly, these moments forged a psychological armor more durable than any single hide. In the face of an indifferent universe, they created a tiny island of subjective safety. Could it be that our earliest communities were literally cemented not just by shared labor, but by shared laughter? The stones themselves seemed to whisper an affirmation. We journey to places like the Chauvet Cave in France, where the air has been still for over 30,000 years. Our eyes are drawn to the magnificent breathing depictions of horses, lions, and rhinos, testaments to the awe and danger of the hunt. But if we look beyond the art, we see the context. We see the wide, flat spaces in the caverns, the soot-blackened ceilings, the hearths placed not for practicality alone, but for gathering. We find not only the bones of consumed meals, but also, in some sites, objects that defy utilitarian explanation, curiously shaped stones arranged in patterns, or bones that might have been used as rattles. It is not a stretch of the imagination to see these spaces as the world's first theaters. Here, in the flickering torchlight that brought the painted beasts to life, the stories would have been told. The day's hunt would be reenacted, the movements of the prey exaggerated, the fear of the hunter mimicked for comic effect. The cave was more than a shelter. It was a sanctuary for narrative, a crucible where the raw trauma of existence could be alchemized through the communal act of storytelling and laughter into a bearable, even shared experience. The art on the walls speaks of the world outside. The empty space in the center hints at the world they built within. This instinct is not a relic of a savage past. It is a thread that runs unbroken through the tapestry of human suffering. In the trenches of the world wars, soldiers crafted a bleak gallows humor about their plight. In concentration camps, prisoners shared whispered jokes that would be incomprehensible to an outsider, a fragile defense against utter despair. In the aftermath of natural disasters, amid the rubble and loss, survivors often find a moment of incongruous laughter, a release of unbearable tension. This is not a failure of grief, but its partner. It is a profound, hardwired response, a psychological pressure valve. Laughter in these extremes does not deny the pain. It simply insists that the human spirit will not be completely defined by it. It is a momentary rebellion, a declaration that even in the face of the abyss, we retain a sliver of agency. We can, for a fleeting second, hold our suffering at arm's length and mock its terrible face. Is this resilience, then, the true evolutionary advantage of a sense of humor? But if laughter was the first spark of culture, the original social medicine, who was its first practitioner? Who was the individual who intuitively understood its power to heal the communal psyche? We can search for them not in the fossil record, but in the archetypal memory of every society that has ever existed. The answer begins to take shape in the figure who stands at the margins of every community, the one who is simultaneously inside and outside the circle of power. This is the figure who emerges from the shadows of the firelight, wearing a motley of patches and a knowing smile. The fool. The jester. This character is a universal constant. In the tribal circle, they were the one who could mock the chief's failed decision. In the medieval court, they were the only soul permitted to speak hard truths to the king without losing their head. Their weapon was not the spear or the sword, but the joke. Their domain was not the battlefield, but the human heart. The jester was, in a very real sense, the first psychologist. They performed a vital therapeutic function for the entire group. By giving voice to the unspoken anxieties, the repressed frustrations, and the hypocrisies of the powerful, the jester detoxified them. Through laughter, the group could acknowledge its own flaws and fears without collapsing into shame or rebellion. The jester's antics were a controlled explosion, a way of releasing social steam before the pressure became too great. In their carnivalesque world, the normal order was inverted. The mighty were brought low with a witty remark, and the absurdities of life were laid bare. This was not anarchy for its own sake. It was a necessary catharsis, a ritual of renewal that allowed the community to return to its structured life, having briefly acknowledged the chaos that lurked beneath. The jester held up a distorted mirror, and in the resulting laughter, the community saw itself more clearly. So, we are left with a tentative observation, a single slice of a much deeper truth. Our ancestors, gathered in their precarious circles of light, did more than just share food and warmth. They shared a cognitive tool of immense power. Laughter and the stories that provoked it was a technology of the spirit. It was a means of transforming collective trauma into collective resilience, of weaving individual vulnerabilities into a stronger social fabric. It was the beginning of culture itself, not as a set of rules, but as a shared understanding that some truths are too heavy to be borne alone and too dark to be faced without a smile. The jester, then, is not merely an entertainer, but the guardian of this ancient pact. They remind us that to laugh in the face of danger is not a sign of ignorance, but a profound act of cognition. It is to accept the reality of the ashes, while simultaneously insisting on the possibility of a phoenix. But if the jester was our first therapist, using laughter to dissect the human condition, who then was the first to systematize this understanding? Who moved from the intuitive healing of the joke to the deliberate inquiry into the mind itself? What quiet figure observed the jester's power and began to ask the deeper questions about why it worked? In the hushed, torch-lit halls of ancient courts, amidst the solemnity of kings and the gravity of priests, One figure was granted a unique passport through the layers of decorum: the Jester. Clad in motley, bells jingling with every irreverent step, this archetype possessed a sacred secular immunity. He could say the unsayable, mock the mighty, and hold a distorted mirror to the powerful, all under the protective cloak of laughter. We have largely relegated this role to the stages of comedy clubs and the boxes of our televisions, viewing these modern successors as mere entertainers. But what if we have misunderstood their deeper function? What if the fool, in his many guises, was not just the first entertainer, but the first psychologist, the original therapist for the human tribe? The question lingers in the air, not as a definitive statement, but as a whisper from our collective past. To understand it, we must first journey inward to the very wiring of our own brains. Laughter, it turns out, is not merely a social signal. It is a complex neurological event, a physiological sigh of relief for a nervous system constantly braced for threat. When a punchline lands, or when absurdity punctures pomposity, the brain undergoes a subtle but significant shift. The amygdala, our ancient alarm bell for danger, momentarily stands down. Stress hormones like cortisol recede, while endorphins, the body's natural opiates, flood the system. This is the biology of a threat averted. The Jester's trick, then, is a kind of benevolent neurological deception. He presents a shadow of a conflict, a caricature of the tyrant, an exaggeration of a social rule. And our brain, ever vigilant, initially prepares for a fight. But the punchline reveals there is no real danger, only a reflection. The resulting laughter is the sound of tension being discharged, a collective exhale that leaves the mind more open, more plastic. This open state is precisely where learning and insight can take root. It is far easier to contemplate a difficult truth about ourselves, our leaders, or our society when it is delivered with a laugh than when it is delivered as an accusation. The joke becomes a Trojan horse, smuggling uncomfortable realities past the high walls of our defensiveness. The court jester could tell the king he was being a fool because he first made the king laugh. The modern satirist can expose political hypocrisy because they first make us chuckle at its sheer absurdity. In this space, laughter is not an escape from reality, but a unique and powerful mode of accessing it. It allows us to examine the sharp edges of truth without immediately cutting ourselves on them. So, is the roar of laughter in a crowded room simply the sound of amusement, or is it the ancient neural signature of a group successfully navigating a perceived social peril, emerging unscathed and slightly wiser? This biological capacity did not emerge in a vacuum. It was sculpted and honed in the fires of communal life, a fact revealed by looking back through the lens of anthropology and archaeology. Long before there were crowned kings with dedicated fools, there were tribal circles and early settlements where social cohesion was a matter of survival. In these groups, the role of the trickster, the clown, was often formalized. These figures operated at the margins of the tribe's social structure, granted license to break taboos, to mock hunters who missed their prey, to parody the solemn rituals of the elders. Their function was not chaos for its own sake, but a controlled release of social steam. By turning simmering tensions into public spectacle, the trickster-jester provided a safe outlet for grievances that, if left to fester, could tear the group apart. He was a living, breathing pressure valve. The Native American Heyoka of the Lakota, for instance, was a sacred clown who did everything backwards, crying in times of joy, laughing in moments of sorrow, to jolt the community out of rigid patterns of thought and remind them of the world's inherent paradoxes. In ancient Greece, the comedic plays during Dionysian festivals served a similar purpose, allowing the citizenry to laugh at the gods and their own leaders, thereby purging collective anxieties in a cathartic ritual. This was social therapy on a grand scale. The jester in these contexts was not an outsider, but a crucial, integrated part of the social immune system. His humor was a diagnostic tool, highlighting the group's ailments, and a therapeutic one, applying the balm of laughter to its wounds. He held up a funhouse mirror to society, and in the resulting distortion, people could see their true shape more clearly. If laughter disarms the individual brain, then the jester's performance disarms the collective body politic, allowing it to confront its own imperfections without resorting to immediate conflict. But what does this ancient ritual look like when translated into the glare of modern stadium lights and the glow of smartphone screens? The lineage of the court jester is unbroken, even if his costume has changed. Today, he is the stand-up comedian working a nightclub, the satirical news anchor deconstructing the day's events, the political cartoonist sketching a potent caricature. They continue to play their age-old role as societal truth-tellers, using humor as their shield and their scalpel. A late-night talk show monologue can distill a week's worth of complex political maneuvering into a joke that resonates with millions, making the abstract tangible and the intimidating manageable. In a world saturated with information and outrage, the comedian becomes a crucial filter, using absurdity to highlight hypocrisy and nonsense. They are our modern-day court jesters, speaking uncomfortable truths to power under the guise of entertainment, leveraging that same ancient neural pathway to make bitter pills easier to swallow. Furthermore, in an increasingly fragmented society, the comedy club has become a secular temple where a shared laugh creates a temporary, powerful sense of community. The collective guffaw at a well-observed joke about the frustrations of modern life is a way of saying, "You see it too? I am not alone." This bonding is a deep, tribal instinct. It reinforces social norms and creates solidarity, just as it did around ancient campfires. The comedian, in this light, is a shaman of the modern age, guiding the tribe through the anxieties of technology, social change, and political turmoil by helping them laugh at the chaos. Yet this very power, the power to disarm and unite, contains a dangerous and inherent duality. If laughter can open a mind, can it not also be used to close one? This is the necessary counterpoint, the shadow that gives the light its form. The same mechanism that allows humor to bypass defensiveness can also be weaponized to trivialize serious issues or silence dissent. When does a joke become a dismissal? A ruler can employ a court jester not to hear hard truths, but to create the illusion of accepting criticism while effectively neutralizing it. After all, it's just a joke, nothing to be taken seriously. This is the just kidding defense scaled to a societal level. Satire can, at times, breed a cynical apathy, making problems seem so entrenched and absurd that action feels futile. Why protest against a caricature? The laughter becomes a narcotic, soothing the pain, but curing nothing. Moreover, the same tribal bonding that laughter creates is predicated on drawing a circle. There are those inside the circle who get the joke, and those outside who become its target. The jester's mirror can easily be tilted to magnify the flaws of the other, to reinforce prejudices and solidify divisions by uniting the group in scornful laughter against an external enemy. The humor that binds one group can be the very thing that ostracizes and dehumanizes another. So, we are left with a paradox. Is the jester's laughter a medicine that heals social rifts, or a weapon that widens them? Can the tool that allows us to see truth also be the one that blinds us to it? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing one side over the other, but in recognizing that the jester's true lesson is about the nature of perception itself. When laughter is wielded as a tool of consciousness, it does more than just reveal a singular truth. It illuminates the fragile, shifting lines of the social landscape. It shows us who is allowed to laugh and at whom. It reveals the unspoken rules of the tribe by showing us what happens when they are broken for comedic effect. The jester, therefore, is not just the first psychologist, but also the first cartographer of power. He maps the invisible boundaries of belonging by walking right up to them, and sometimes by crossing them. His laughter draws the line between us and them in stark relief, forcing us to confront the very act of exclusion that defines a community. And this inevitably leads our gaze outward to the one standing just beyond the circle of light, the one who is often the butt of the joke. If the jester holds a mirror to the powerful from within the court, what of the laughter that comes from outside the gates? What truth is revealed in the defiant chuckle of the outsider, the one who has been pushed to the margins and decides to laugh back? The sound begins not as a sound at all, but as a shared breath. It ripples through a room, a vibration that instantly draws a circle around those who feel it and those who do not. Laughter, we are told, is a universal language, a bridge of joy and relief. But what of the laughter that points, the chuckle that isolates, the roar that rises not from a shared joke, but from a shared target? Why does this most connective of human behaviors so often wear the mask of exclusion? Consider the one being laughed at. They are, almost by definition, the other. The one whose clothes are a decade out of style, whose accent curls around unfamiliar syllables, whose ideas challenge the comfortable furniture of conventional thought. In that moment of collective mockery, the group feels a sudden, warm cohesion. It is a dark alchemy, turning the discomfort of difference into the gold of social belonging. But what is the ancient machinery whirring within us, converting another's strangeness into our own sense of superiority? The biology of a sneer reveals a startling truth. Deep within the brain's complex reward system, a shot of dopamine, the very same chemical associated with pleasure, victory, and a satisfying meal, can be triggered by the simple, perceived triumph of our social group over another. Neuroscientists observing brain activity have seen this flare of gratification when individuals witness their in-group succeeding, even in the most trivial of contests. There is no physical battle, no spoils to be won, yet the brain celebrates as if there were. This neurological spark is the kindling for the fire of mockery. When we laugh at someone, we are, in a very real sense, declaring a bloodless victory. We have identified a deviation from our norm, and in collectively recognizing it, we reinforce the norm itself. The laughter is a celebration of our own cohesion, a psychic reward for policing the borders of our tribe. But does this ancient wiring, designed for a world of tangible threats, now misfire in the complex landscape of modern identity, creating enemies where there are none? To understand this, we must travel back to a world where the margin for error was vanishingly thin. Archaeology and anthropology suggest that for our hunter-gatherer ancestors, survival was a group project. Trust was not a philosophical concept, but a daily necessity. In such a world, the ability to quickly identify an outsider, someone from a different band with different customs, a different way of speaking or dressing, was a critical survival strategy. That stranger could mean a new alliance, or they could mean danger. Laughter, in this context, may have served as a low-risk tool for boundary maintenance. A unified chuckle at the strange headdress or the unfamiliar gesture was a way of saying, "We are us, and you are not." It was a social immune response, isolating a potential threat without the immediate need for violence. The laughter was a club, yes, but a lightweight one, designed to keep the tribe safe within its cultural cradle. Is the modern office gossip or the schoolyard taunt merely a pale echo of this primal need to define the safe inside from the dangerous outside? Yet, the story does not end with the powerful laughing down at the marginalized. In the modern arena, particularly in the art of stand-up comedy, the laughter of the outsider has been seized and repurposed. A comedian from a minority group steps onto the stage, a solitary figure under a spotlight. They do not wait to be mocked. They preempt the mockery. They take the very stereotypes, the very slurs, the very awkwardness of their existence on the margins, and they hold them up to the light, twisting them into something absurd, something hilarious. This is not laughter as a weapon of exclusion, but laughter as a shield, a sword, and a tool of redefinition. It is a powerful act of alchemy in reverse, turning the base metal of prejudice into the gold of shared, if uncomfortable, humanity. The comedian, by controlling the narrative of their own difference, drains the poison from the joke. The audience's laughter is no longer a signal of superiority, but of complicity and, perhaps, understanding. The power dynamic is flipped. The laughed at becomes the laughter maker. From the bottom, they speak truth to the top, using the top's own weapon. But is this a true rebalancing of power, or merely a more sophisticated form of survival within an unequal system? This presents a profound paradox. Can the laughter of the oppressed ever be truly liberating, or is it always, in some way, a reaction to the frame set by the oppressor? When a marginalized comedian jokes about their marginalization, are they dismantling the stereotype, or simply making it more palatable for the majority? The laughter they elicit is complex. It can be a laugh of recognition from those who share their experience, a laugh of discomfort from those who are implicated, and a laugh of relief from those who are just glad the tension is broken. But does this collective release ultimately lead to change? Or does it simply allow the audience to feel progressive without actually progressing? Is the stage a pulpit for revolution, or a pressure valve that releases the steam of social discontent, ensuring the boiler never bursts? The weaponized laughter of the outsider is brave and necessary. But is it a decisive battle won, or just a brilliantly fought skirmish in a war that rages on? Perhaps we need to widen our gaze even further, to a realm where laughter has shed its bodily form and become pure, viral information. The ancient tribal circle has expanded to encompass the entire globe, digitally connected. The chuckle around the campfire has been replaced by the meme, the shitpost, the curated clip of comedic ridicule that can circle the planet in minutes. In the digital coliseum, laughter is no longer just a social signal, it is a political currency and a weapon of informational warfare. A well-timed humorous image can dismantle a politician's credibility more effectively than a 1,000-word essay. A viral trend of mockery can unite millions against a common cause, or it can mercilessly hound an individual into silence. The dopamine hit of social validation is now quantified in likes and shares, a relentless feedback loop that rewards the most biting, exclusionary forms of humor. We have become a digital species, crafting new identities in the flickering light of screens. And in this new existence, the laughter of the outsider has found a terrifying and potent new dimension. It is no longer confined to a comedy club. It is in the very air we breathe online. So we are left to wonder, as we construct these vast, interconnected digital tribes, are we merely replaying our oldest instincts with newer, more powerful tools? Have we, in our hunger for connection and superiority, evolved into a new kind of digital ancestor, for whom a laugh is no longer just a sound, but the primary language of political combat? And if so, what happens when the whole world becomes an audience, and every difference is just a punchline waiting to be born? A single image flashes across a screen, a clever juxtaposition, a caption that strikes a perfect, absurd chord. In an instant, the corners of the mouth twitch, a chuckle escapes, and the thumb, almost of its own volition, taps share. The meme spreads, a digital wildfire, igniting the laughter of millions. It feels harmless, a moment of collective levity in a chaotic online world. But what if the laughter itself is the delivery mechanism? What if the joke is not just a joke, but a carefully crafted key, designed to bypass our rational defenses and unlock a predetermined sentiment? The ancient, unifying act of laughter is being quietly, efficiently weaponized. The smile has become the newest frontier in information warfare. The transformation begins not in a server farm, but deep within the architecture of our own minds. Humor is not a frivolous add-on to human consciousness. It is a fundamental biological process with a distinct and powerful neurological signature. When we encounter something intended to be funny, our brains perform a rapid, unconscious calculation. It's a sudden shift in perspective, a cognitive jolt where an expected pattern is disrupted and then, almost instantly, reconfigured in a new, surprising, and non-threatening way. This incongruity resolution theory of humor explains why a good punchline works. The brain, a relentless pattern-seeking machine, enjoys the brief thrill of disorientation, followed by the satisfying click of a new understanding. This neurological event is remarkably efficient. Information delivered with humor is processed faster and, crucially, remembered longer than neutral information. The reason is chemical. A genuine laugh triggers the release of endorphins, the body's natural feel-good compounds. This endorphin rush creates a state of mild euphoria and relaxation, effectively lowering our cognitive guard. In this receptive state, the message wrapped within the joke, the political jab, the social commentary, the ideological nudge, is absorbed with less scrutiny. It sidesteps the critical faculties of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that analyzes, questions, and resists. Laughter, therefore, becomes a perfect Trojan horse. It disarms the sentries of skepticism, allowing the payload of persuasion to roll straight through the gates of perception. We are not just laughing at the meme. We are, in a very real sense, digesting its underlying premise without the usual stomach acid of doubt. Is our capacity for joy, then, also our greatest cognitive vulnerability? This neural trickery is not a bug of the modern age, but a feature with deep evolutionary roots. Long before the internet, before the printing press, human societies were built on oral traditions. In these intimate face-to-face communities, laughter served a vital social function. It was a binding agent, a way to reinforce shared values and police group norms. A joke at the expense of a lazy hunter or a foolish leader was a powerful, if subtle, tool of social correction. It allowed the group to communicate disapproval without the direct confrontation that could lead to violent conflict. The laughter of the many could gently, or not so gently, pressure the one to conform. More profoundly, in communities living under oppression, where open dissent was punishable, laughter and satire became a primary language of resistance. The court jester was the only one who could speak truth to power without losing his head, precisely because his message was cloaked in the guise of foolishness. Slave tales from the American South, for instance, are rich with coded humor. Stories where Breer Rabbit outsmarts stronger foes, providing not just entertainment but a psychological blueprint for survival and subversion. The laughter shared among the oppressed was a silent signal of solidarity, a way of saying, we see the same absurdities, we share the same unspoken truth. In this context, laughter was a weapon of the weak, a way to carve out a space for agency and identity. But if laughter can empower the marginalized, what happens when the powerful learn to wield its grammar for their own ends? The digital age has democratized the jester's crown, with consequences that are both liberating and deeply unsettling. The internet, with its viral economies of attention, has supercharged the ancient mechanics of laughter, turning them into a scalable technology of influence. The meme, the shitpost, the viral video, these are the new folk tales, transmitted not around a campfire, but through a global, instantaneous network. In this new arena, laughter is no longer just a tool for social cohesion or subversive resistance. It has been industrialized into a tool for manipulation. Political operatives and influence campaigns have become adept meme makers. They understand that a potent image macro or a catchy ironic phrase can do the work of a 1,000-word policy paper and do it far more effectively. These engineered jokes are designed to accomplish several goals: to dehumanize opponents by reducing them to laughable caricatures, to make complex geopolitical issues seem simple and mockable, and to create in-groups and out-groups based on a shared sense of humor. The laughter becomes a badge of belonging. To get the joke is to be part of the tribe. To find it offensive or unfunny is to mark oneself as an outsider. This tribal laughter can solidify preconceived notions and widen societal divides, all under the cover of just joking. The very ambiguity of humor, its ability to be dismissed as harmless fun, provides plausible deniability for those deploying it as a weapon. When called out for spreading misinformation or hate, the response is a simple, deflecting shrug. Can't you take a joke? This leads us to a precarious and deeply ironic crossroads. The very thing that makes laughter such a powerful force for connection, its ability to bypass reason and speak directly to our social selves, is what makes it so dangerously susceptible to hijacking. If our laughter can be so easily directed, so efficiently manufactured to serve an agenda, how do we distinguish the authentic, spontaneous chuckle from the engineered, manipulative one? Is the laughter that erupts from a clever political meme a genuine expression of amusement, or is it a conditioned response, a Pavlovian reaction to a stimulus designed to trigger our tribal affiliations? In an ocean of content vying for our attention, has laughter become just another metric to be optimized, another lever to be pulled? When the line between the court jester and the propaganda minister blurs into invisibility, does the sound of laughter still signify joy, or has it become the background noise of a silent digital conquest? Perhaps the answer lies not in the laugh itself, but in the silence that follows it. There is a particular, piercing anxiety known to anyone who has ever told a joke that lands with a thud. The moment of silence after a failed witticism is a small social death. It feels like a rejection that is more than just a critique of comedic timing. This fear may be a primal echo. For our prehistoric ancestors, social cohesion was not a luxury. It was a matter of survival. To be ostracized from the group, to be met with silence instead of engagement, was a death sentence. Laughter, in this light, was a vital social signal, a loud, clear confirmation of acceptance. It was the sound of the tribe saying, "You are one of us. You understand our world in the same way we do." So when we share a meme and it is met with likes and laughing emojis, we are not just spreading information. We are engaging in a ritual of social validation. The contagion of a viral joke is a powerful reaffirmation of belonging to a vast digital tribe. But this ancient need for acceptance, this deep-seated fear of the silence, makes us exquisitely vulnerable. If laughter is the sound of social safety, then those who can orchestrate that sound, who can promise that belonging, hold a profound power over us. They can make us laugh on command, and in doing so, guide our allegiances. The weaponization of laughter, therefore, preys on one of our most basic human fears, the terror of being left out, of being the only one not in on the joke. And in a world more connected yet more fragmented than ever, is there anything we crave more than the sound of our own laughter, echoed back by the crowd? You tell a joke. The punchline hangs in the air for a moment, a fragile bubble of anticipated mirth. Then it pops, not with a roar of laughter, but with silence. A quiet so profound it feels physical. The air grows heavy, and a cold, familiar dread creeps up your spine. It's a sensation far more potent than mere embarrassment. It's a deep, visceral chill, a sudden and unsettling feeling of being on the outside, looking in. Why does this social silence, this failure of a joke to land, carry such a profound and immediate sting? The answer is written not in the pages of an etiquette book, but in the ancient weathered stone of our evolutionary past. At its core, the brain reacts to this social silence with the same primal alarm as it would to a physical threat. Functional MRI scans reveal a fascinating and somewhat cruel reality. When a person's attempt at humor is met with quiet, the brain's fear centers, particularly the amygdala, light up with activity. This is the same neural territory associated with pain, rejection, and anxiety. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of our rational thinking, struggles to intervene. It's as if an ancient alarm bell has been rung, one that bypasses modern logic entirely. The joke itself is irrelevant. The silence that follows is interpreted by our most primitive wiring as a danger signal. This isn't a conscious thought process. "Ah, my joke was subpar." It is a physiological flood, a chemical whisper from a time when belonging wasn't about comfort, but about survival. What is this deep-seated circuitry that equates a failed joke with a potential threat to our very existence? To understand that, we must journey back, far beyond the coffee shops and conference rooms of today, to the savannas and forests where our ancestors lived in small, tight-knit bands. In these primordial societies, isolation was a death sentence. To be cast out from the group meant facing predators, starvation, and the elements alone. Survival was a collective endeavor. Within this context, social cues like laughter were not mere entertainment. They were essential binding agents, the glue of the tribe. A shared laugh was a signal of synchrony, a public declaration of, "I am with you, we are the same." It reinforced social bonds, eased tensions after conflicts, and solidified hierarchies and alliances. Conversely, the failure of a social bid, like a playful gesture or a joke that falls flat, was a glaring red flag. It was a rupture in the social fabric, a moment of misalignment. In a world where every member's contribution was vital, an individual who could not effectively read or contribute to the group's emotional rhythm was a liability. A joke unanswered was more than awkward. It was a potential precursor to ostracism. Could that moment of silence for our ancestors have been the first chilling hint of exile? This ancient fear has not been lost to time. It has simply been repackaged for the modern world. Today, the threat is rarely literal death, but a social one, the fear of humiliation, of being deemed awkward or unlikable. This dread is so powerful that it often leads individuals to avoid social interactions altogether, a phenomenon psychologists link to social anxiety. In our hyper-connected yet paradoxically isolating age, the laugh has become an even more critical, if subtle, barometer of connection. The quick, affirming chuckle in a video call, the emoji-laden reply to a witty text, the shared amusement over a meme. These are the modern equivalents of the tribal chuckle. They are tiny, constant reassurances that we are still in sync, still part of the tribe. We have traded the campfire for the smartphone screen, but the fundamental need for that resonant, affirming sound remains unchanged. The silent void that follows a digital joke can feel just as cold as the silence around a primordial fire. Has our technology, for all its wonders, merely given us new arenas in which to play out our oldest social fears? This leads us to a curious counterpoint. If laughter is such a crucial, hardwired signal of bonding, could we not simply fake it? Could we manufacture the sound of belonging to soothe our own ancient fears, or to manipulate the social fears of others? This is the territory of the polite chuckle, the social lubricant offered out of obligation rather than genuine amusement. But the human brain, it seems, is an astute detective of authenticity. Research suggests we are remarkably adept at distinguishing between a genuine, spontaneous laugh, the uncontrollable, breathy Duchenne laugh that crinkles the eyes, and a forced, polite one. The fake laugh tends to be higher-pitched, more nasal, and rhythmically uneven. Our subconscious picks up on these subtle acoustic differences. A false laugh might smooth over an immediate awkwardness, but it doesn't truly satisfy the deep-seated need for genuine connection. It's like offering a plaster for a wound that requires stitches. It covers the surface but does little to heal the underlying injury. So, if our brains are so finely tuned to detect the real from the fake, what evolutionary purpose does this discernment serve? Why can we not be easily fooled? The answer to that question reveals a deeper secret of our social evolution. The human brain's hypersensitivity to fake laughter is not a bug, but a feature. In the treacherous landscape of social dynamics, an individual who could convincingly fake affiliation without truly feeling it was a dangerous prospect, a freeloader on the group's emotional resources, or worse, a manipulator. The ability to detect insincerity was a vital defense mechanism. It protected the integrity of the tribe by ensuring that the bonds of laughter were built on a foundation of genuine shared experience and mutual understanding. A fake laugh might temporarily placate the fear of isolation, but it cannot replicate the warm, secure feeling of true belonging that a shared, spontaneous laugh provides. It is the difference between being tolerated and being truly accepted. This intricate dance of expression and detection, of offering laughter and judging its quality, is a continuous, unconscious negotiation of our social standing. It is a silent language we all speak, one that predates words themselves. And so, we are left with a paradox. We crave the affirming sound of laughter to quiet the ancient fear of being cast out, yet we possess an innate radar for its counterfeit. This tension forces us into a state of constant, subtle calibration in our interactions. It raises a final, lingering thought about the very nature of our social existence. If the fear of isolation is the shadow and genuine laughter is the light, What does it mean that we are equipped to so precisely discern one from the other? Does this sophisticated sensitivity suggest that our deepest social need is not just for any connection, but for one that is authentically, unreservedly real? And if so, what happens when, in the absence of genuine mirth, we find ourselves reflexively reaching for another tool entirely, a nervous, self-deprecating chuckle in the face of our own embarrassment? The room falls silent for a beat too long. You've just called your new colleague by the wrong name, the name of your previous coworker, and the error hangs in the air, palpable and awkward. Your face flushes with a familiar heat, but instead of stammering an apology, you let out a short, breathy laugh, a sound that is neither joyful nor humorous. It's a reflex, an almost involuntary puff of air that seems to deflate the tension. Everyone else smiles. A wave of relief washes over the group, and the moment passes. Yet, later, you wonder, why did you laugh? There was nothing funny about the mistake. In fact, it was mildly embarrassing. So why does this strange, incongruent sound emerge from our lips at the precise moments we wish to disappear? This curious paradox, laughter born not of joy but of social discomfort, is a silent language we all speak but seldom question. It feels like a glitch, a misfire of our emotional circuitry. But what if this glitch is, in fact, a feature of our design? A sophisticated social tool forged deep in our evolutionary past and polished by the relentless demands of modern life. To understand the laugh of embarrassment is to embark on a journey through the layered architecture of the human animal, from the primal fires of the savannah to the fluorescent-lit meeting rooms of today. It is to see this spontaneous sound not as a simple reaction, but as a complex negotiation between our biology, our history, and our unending quest for belonging. At its most fundamental level, the embarrassed laugh is a biological event, a clever hack orchestrated by our nervous system. When we commit a social faux pas, our body registers it as a threat, a minor one perhaps, but a threat nonetheless. The amygdala, the brain's alarm bell, triggers a cascade of stress hormones. Our heart rate quickens, our palms may sweat. We are primed for a fight-or-flight response, a system brilliantly designed for escaping predators, but woefully inadequate for navigating a cocktail party. Into this internal storm steps laughter. It is a physiological release valve. The physical act of laughing, the sharp exhalations, the contraction of the diaphragm, interrupts the stress cycle. It signals the brain to release endorphins, the body's natural painkillers and mood elevators, dialing down the internal alarm and creating a sense of calm. This laugh, then, is first and foremost a self-soothing mechanism. It is our body's way of administering a mild internal sedative, a chemical balm for a wounded ego. But the signal does not stay internal. It is broadcast. And this is where the biology merges seamlessly with social strategy. The sound of laughter, even when forced, acts as a powerful social cue. In the tense silence following a mistake, a growl or a grimace would escalate the situation, signaling aggression or deep distress. A laugh, however, does the opposite. It is a universal signal of non-aggression. By laughing, we are communicating a message to those around us. I am aware of my error. I am not a threat. This is not a challenge. Let's move on. It disarms the potential for conflict by proactively demonstrating submission. In a single breathy chuckle, we manage to apologize, acknowledge our own lowered status, and invite the group to reaffirm our membership, all without uttering a single word. Is this, then, the primary function of this strange sound? To serve as a chemical pacifier for ourselves and a social white flag for others? To find the roots of this behavior, we must travel back, beyond the confines of modern civility, to the small, interdependent bands of our ancestors. Survival in such groups was not just about finding food and avoiding predators. It was about maintaining harmony. In a world where social exile was a death sentence, any slip-up, taking a larger share of food, accidentally bumping a dominant member, could escalate into a dangerous conflict. The individual who responded to a perceived challenge with bared teeth and a clenched fist might not live to see the next sunrise, but the individual who responded with a relaxed, open-mouthed gesture, a precursor to laughter, could diffuse the tension. This was a smart submission response. It was a way of saying, "You are right. I am lower status, and I mean no harm," thereby preventing the conflict from escalating. The laugh of embarrassment, therefore, might be an ancient relic of our need to appease, a vocal gesture that signals our willingness to conform to the social hierarchy and maintain the fragile peace of the tribe. Could our modern, awkward chuckle be the civilized echo of a survival mechanism that once kept us safe within the clan? This ancient tool has found a profound purpose in the complex theater of modern society. The face-saving laugh is a cross-cultural phenomenon, a kind of social pressure valve that allows minor transgressions to be vented harmlessly into the atmosphere. In a business meeting, a misplaced comment met with a self-deprecating laugh prevents a minor disagreement from festering into resentment. On a first date, a spilled drink followed by an embarrassed giggle transforms a potential disaster into a shared, endearing moment. It is a ritual we all understand intuitively. It allows us to lose a little face in order to save a great deal more. By laughing at ourselves, we preempt the judgment of others, demonstrating social intelligence and emotional resilience. We show that we are secure enough to acknowledge our imperfections, and in doing so, we often strengthen our social bonds. The laugh becomes a form of social glue, repairing tiny fractures in our relationships before they can widen into chasms. But if this mechanism is so universal and so beneficial, why does it sometimes feel so strained, so inauthentic? This brings us to the inevitable counterpoint, the shadow that follows the light. If the embarrassed laugh is a healthy reflex, why do some people find themselves utterly unable to produce it at the crucial moment, freezing instead into silent, mortified paralysis? Their internal alarm is so loud that it overwhelms the soothing mechanism of laughter, leaving them trapped in the full, excruciating force of their shame. Conversely, why do others laugh too easily and too long, their giggles spiraling into a nervous, uncontrollable torrent that only amplifies the awkwardness they seek to escape? In these instances, the social signal becomes distorted. The laughter is no longer a calibrated tool for reconnection. It becomes a symptom of anxiety, a sign that the internal pressure is too great for the valve to handle. It ceases to be a signal of "I'm okay" and becomes a cry of "I'm not okay." This raises a troubling question. When does this adaptive social behavior cross the line into something more pathological? What if the very mechanism designed to protect us can, under certain conditions, betray us? Perhaps the line is drawn not in the act itself, but in the locus of control. A healthy, embarrassed laugh is a conscious, albeit rapid, choice, a social strategy deployed with intention. It is a tool we wield. But when the laughter controls us, when it erupts unbidden and uncontrollable, it ceases to be a tool and becomes a tic, a spasm of the psyche. There are neurological conditions, such as pseudobulbar affect, where individuals experience episodes of involuntary, inappropriate laughter or crying completely disconnected from their actual feelings. A minor embarrassment might trigger uncontrollable manic giggles that are neurologically mandated, not socially negotiated. This is laughter stripped of its social meaning, reduced to a mere biological event. So, where exactly is the boundary between the polite, strategic laugh that mends a social tear and the disordered laugh that signals a system in distress? Is it a difference of degree or a difference of kind? This inquiry inevitably leads us to a darker, more fundamental uncertainty. We have explored the laugh of embarrassment as a clever social adaptation, a bridge back to connection. But we must also consider its potential to become a mask, a performance that hides a deeper turmoil. In our eagerness to smooth things over, to appease the group, do we sometimes laugh when we should instead allow ourselves to feel the genuine sting of shame? Does this reflex, in conditioning us to quickly dismiss our discomfort, prevent us from engaging in deeper, more meaningful self-reflection? The laugh that saves face might also, at times, prevent us from saving our authentic self. It is a convenient social shorthand, but could an over-reliance on it make us strangers to our own more complex and perhaps more valuable negative emotions? And so, we are left not with an answer, but with a more profound puzzle. The nervous laugh is a Janus-faced phenomenon, simultaneously a signal of health and a potential symptom of disorder. It is a bridge between our inner world and the social sphere, a tool for survival that can, under the right pressure, become a weapon against our own peace. We have peeled back the first layer, finding biology, evolution, and social utility. But beneath that lies a more disquieting truth about the performance of self in a world that often values harmony over honesty. If a simple, awkward laugh can contain such multitudes, soothing our nerves, appeasing our tribe, yet potentially masking our true selves, then what does it mean when the laughter itself breaks free from the script? When the giggle meant to diffuse a situation becomes unhinged, uncontrollable, a sound that no longer seeks social approval but seems to originate from a place beyond our control? What happens when the social signal becomes a neurological symptom, when the performance of appeasement, the sound begins not as a mirthful chuckle, but as a low, guttural exhalation that quickly escalates? It's a laugh, unmistakably. But it's wrong. It's too loud, too prolonged, devoid of the warmth that usually accompanies genuine amusement. It echoes in the sterile room of a neurologist's office, a jarring soundtrack to a scene of profound distress. The person producing it is not happy. Their eyes are wide with a mixture of fear and embarrassment. They cannot stop. This is pathological laughter, a neurological glitch where the body's machinery for joy is hijacked, producing an empty echo of the real thing. It is a laugh divorced from feeling, a signal severed from its source, and it forces an unsettling question. If a laugh can be broken, what does that reveal about the very nature of this most human of sounds? This condition, known as pseudo-bulbar affect, is a cruel paradox. The individual's internal emotional state may be one of calm or even sadness, yet their face contorts into a smile, and this bizarre, involuntary laughter erupts. It is a fault in the wiring, often stemming from damage to the prefrontal cortex or other regulatory pathways in the brain. This region, the seat of our executive control, normally acts as a sophisticated conductor, ensuring our emotional expressions are appropriate to the social score. But when a lesion disrupts this delicate network, the inhibition fails. The laughter, or sometimes its counterpart, uncontrollable crying, fires autonomously, like an engine continuing to run after the key has been removed. Similarly, galactic seizures, a rare form of epilepsy originating in the hypothalamus, can trigger bouts of laughter as a primary symptom. Here, the laugh is not a response to a joke, but a physiological storm, an electrical short circuit in the deep, ancient parts of our brain that govern our most basic drives. In these cases, the laugh is purely mechanical, a spasm of the vocal cords orchestrated by faulty neurons. It is a biological puppet show, where the strings are pulled by unseen lesions, and the puppet is a human being desperately trying to reclaim their own emotional narrative. What, then, would an archaeologist make of such a sound if they could hear its echo across millennia? While soft tissue and momentary behaviors do not fossilize, the bony cradle of the brain does. There are ancient skulls belonging to our hominin ancestors or early Homo sapiens that show unusual deformities, evidence of healed traumatic injuries or congenital conditions that might have affected neural development. Could one of these individuals have been prone to sudden, inexplicable outbursts of laughter? In a small, tightly knit hunter-gatherer band, where social cohesion was synonymous with survival, such behavior would have been profoundly disruptive. A person laughing at a funeral or during a tense moment of stalking prey would not have been seen as suffering from a medical condition. They would have been an anomaly, a dangerous deviation from the norm. Their laughter, a biological error, would have been interpreted through a social or spiritual lens. Perhaps they were touched by a capricious spirit, or maybe they were harboring a secret, malevolent knowledge. Their social fate, were they ostracized, cared for, or even revered as an oracle, would have hinged on the group's ability to make sense of a sound that arrived without a context they could understand. Their skull is a silent testament to a life lived, but the potential for their anomalous laughter hints at the immense weight social conformity has always carried. This weight is felt no less heavily in our modern world. Today, the person with pseudo-bulbar affect faces a different kind of peril, one of social exile rather than spiritual interpretation. Their involuntary laughter in a quiet library, during a serious business meeting, or at a somber occasion marks them instantly. They are met with stares of confusion, judgment, and fear. We are exquisitely tuned to the nuances of laughter, and when it violates our unwritten rules of timing and sincerity, we recoil. We label it as weird, inappropriate, or creepy. This social punishment reveals a deep, almost instinctual truth. We rely on the authenticity of laughter as a barometer of shared reality and social bond. A laugh that is out of sync is a threat to that shared reality. It creates a crack in the foundation of a social interaction, and our immediate impulse is to distance ourselves from the source of the instability. The modern stigma attached to wrong laughter is a pale reflection of an ancient survival mechanism, one that prized predictable social cues above all else. This leads us to a disquieting precipice of thought. If a laugh can be a mere biological accident, a random firing of neurons completely disconnected from joy or humor, then how can we ever be certain of the laughter we hear every day? The foundation of 1,000 social interactions, the shared chuckle that seals a deal, the warm laugh that builds friendship, the conspiratorial giggle that signals belonging, begins to feel less solid. We assume laughter is a window into another's soul, a genuine expression of an internal state. But what if it is just a mask that the brain can wear, either by choice or by mechanical failure? The line between a sincere laugh and a pathological one is terrifyingly thin. Both are produced by the same vocal apparatus, orchestrated by the same brain. The only difference is the intent, the origin, the spark that ignites it. But from the outside, can we truly tell? Is our own confidence in discerning real mirth from its hollow imitation just a comforting illusion? Yet the human brain is not a passive recipient of this sonic signal. It is in fact an exquisitely calibrated lie detector for laughter. We are remarkably adept at spotting a fake. We might not always consciously acknowledge it, but a forced, social laugh, the polite titter, the corporate chortle, triggers a subtle unease. It lacks the chaotic, unpredictable rhythm of a true Duchenne laugh, the one that crinkles the eyes and engages the whole body. Our brains are constantly, subconsciously analyzing the acoustic signature of every laugh we hear, comparing it to an internal template of authenticity. This hypersensitivity suggests that the stakes for detecting fraudulent laughter have been evolutionarily high. In our deep past, survival depended on trusting your tribe. Someone who could fake emotional congruence, the smiling betrayer, the laughing manipulator, posed a direct threat to the group's integrity. The ability to spot the fake, to sense the dissonance between a smile and the eyes, was not a social nicety. It was a defense mechanism. Laughter, therefore, was never just communication. It was an ongoing evolutionary arms race between the skill to deceive and the imperative to detect deception. So we are left suspended between two truths. The laugh can be an empty biological shell, and yet we are wired with a profound, ancient capacity to sense its emptiness. This duality transforms laughter from a simple expression into something far more complex and powerful. It is not merely a report on our internal state, but a tool for connection, a weapon for social manipulation, and a test of social intelligence. If the pathological laugh shows us that the mechanism can be broken, our innate skepticism of the inauthentic laugh hints at why the mechanism had to be so robust and so finely tuned in the first place. It makes every genuine shared laugh feel like a small miracle, a fleeting moment where two complex neural systems successfully bypass the potential for error and deceit to achieve a rare and precious synchrony. But this very awareness casts a long shadow. It makes us wonder, in our most honest moments, whether the next laugh we hear is a bridge of genuine connection or merely a cleverly constructed facade. And if we can so easily doubt the laughter of others, what does that say about the laughter we ourselves produce? Are we always certain of its source? The secret of the fake laugh begins in a crowded room. The air is thick with the clinking of glasses and the murmur of a dozen conversations. Across from you, a colleague finishes an anecdote, and a chorus of laughter erupts. Your own lips curve, a sound escapes your throat, a polite, social chuckle. But in the same instant, your brain, a master detector honed over millennia, registers another laugh nearby. It is a fraction of a second too long, a note too high, the rhythm just a little too perfectly synchronized. It is unmistakably fake. And you know it, not because you have consciously analyzed it, but because a subtle, ancient alarm has been tripped deep within your neural circuitry. Why are we so exquisitely, instinctively attuned to the authenticity of a laugh? The answer lies not in the social graces of the modern world, but in the raw biology of sound. A genuine laugh, the kind that erupts from a place of unguarded surprise or joy, is a chaotic, almost uncontrollable symphony. It is produced by a specific, involuntary pattern of vocal cord vibrations, orchestrated by the more primitive, emotional centers of the brain like the amygdala. Its acoustic signature is distinct. A series of short, explosive bursts, each lasting about 1/15 of a second, separated by regular intervals. The pitch is uneven, the volume fluctuates, and the entire sequence is often punctuated by snorts, gasps for air, and a loss of bodily control. It is messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. A fake laugh, in stark contrast, is a product of the conscious mind, a command issued from the prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning and social decorum. This manufactured sound is smoother, more controlled. Its notes are more uniform, its rhythm more metronomic. It lacks the ragged, breathless quality of true mirth. Our auditory cortex and amygdala work in tandem, processing these acoustic cues in milliseconds. They compare the incoming sound against a deep-seated library of authentic vocalizations, instantly flagging the discrepancy. We are hearing, in essence, the difference between an involuntary reflex and a deliberate performance. But if our brains are so finely calibrated to detect the fake, why does the fake laugh persist as a universal social currency? To understand this, we must journey back to a time when laughter was not about politeness, but about survival. Imagine a small band of early humans huddled around a fire, the darkness beyond the circle of light teeming with unseen threats. In this environment, social cohesion was not a luxury, it was a matter of life and death. Laughter functioned as a vital social glue, a signal of safety and belonging within the group. It was a way of saying, "We are at ease here, the threat has passed." But what of the individual whose laugh did not ring true? The one who mimicked the group's relief without genuinely feeling it? To our ancestors, that incongruity was a potential danger signal. A fake laugh could be the sign of a deceiver, someone feigning allegiance while plotting betrayal. It could indicate a manipulator, using the mask of camaraderie to gain an unfair advantage. The ability to detect this auditory forgery was a critical survival skill. It allowed an individual to distinguish true ally from false friend, to sense the subtle cracks in the group's solidarity that could, under pressure, become fatal fissures. The faint unease we feel today when we hear a forced chuckle is the ghost of this ancient vigilance, a whisper from a past where reading the truth behind a smile could mean the difference between life and death. In our modern, comparatively safe world, the fake laugh has been largely stripped of its life or death connotations. We employ it as a tool of social lubrication, a way to navigate the complex web of workplace hierarchies, family gatherings, and polite conversation. It is a shorthand for, "I acknowledge your attempt at humor," or "I wish to maintain a harmonious atmosphere." Yet, the ancient detector in our brains has not been decommissioned. Studies have shown that when people are exposed to a fake laugh, even when they are not consciously aware of its inauthenticity, their physiological responses change. There is a subtle increase in stress hormones, a slight shift in posture, a minute tightening around the eyes. The listener doesn't necessarily call out the faker, but a gentle, invisible barrier is erected. The interaction continues, but it is now layered with a faint, almost imperceptible wariness. The social bond that a genuine laugh would have strengthened is, instead, merely maintained at a polite distance. The fake laugh achieves its immediate goal of social compliance, but it fails at the deeper, more primal task of forging a true connection. It is a transaction, not a gift. So, if laughter is so deeply intertwined with social connection, a signal meant for an audience, what does that say about its very nature? This leads us to a curious paradox. If you were to find yourself completely alone, perhaps reading a humorous book or recalling a private memory, could you produce a laugh that is, by its very definition, authentic? You might smile. You might even emit a soft chuckle. But the great, belly-clutching, tear-inducing roar of laughter, the kind that leaves you breathless and weak, is a rarity in solitude. It seems laughter requires a witness. It is not merely an expression of internal amusement. It is a form of communication, a social contagion that gains its full power through shared experience. Its primary function appears to be not to relieve our own tension, but to synchronize emotional states within a group, to broadcast our understanding of a shared reality. A laugh in solitude is like a tree falling in an empty forest. It may make a sound, but it lacks the resonance that gives it meaning. It is an incomplete act. This begs a troubling question. If laughter needs a chorus, is any laugh ever truly pure, or is it always, on some level, a performance for others, a signal tailored to reinforce the social fabric? Perhaps the most profound secret of the fake laugh is not that it reveals our capacity for deception, but that it illuminates the fundamental truth about laughter itself. It is a mirror held up to our innate social dependency. The fake laugh exists because the real one is so vitally important. We counterfeit the currency precisely because it has such immense value. Our hypersensitivity to the forgery is a testament to how much we rely on genuine, unfiltered connection to navigate the world. The fake laugh is the shadow cast by the bright light of our need to belong. So the next time you hear that polite, slightly strained chuckle in a crowded room, recognize it not just as a social faux pas, but as the echo of an ancient pact, a pact where the authenticity of our joy was the bedrock of our survival. And if laughter is indeed a bridge between isolated selves, a signal flung out into the social world seeking an echo, then what does it mean when we find ourselves laughing alone in the dark, with no one to answer? Is that the truest laugh of all, or simply the loneliest sound a social animal can make? You're watching a comedy special, alone on your couch. A joke lands, and a quiet smile touches your lips. It's clever, you think. But then, you watch the same special later with a friend. The same joke hits, and this time, you erupt. A genuine belly-deep laugh fills the room. The joke wasn't funnier the second time. The chemistry was different. The social alchemy had changed. What is this invisible force that amplifies a chuckle into a roar when we are in the company of others? Is laughter, this most fundamental human expression, truly meant to be a solo act? Or is its full resonance reserved for the chorus? Biologically, laughter is a primitive, social instinct before it is a response to humor. It originates not in the sophisticated language-processing neocortex, but deep within the ancient, subcortical regions of the brain, the same areas responsible for fundamental, instinctual behaviors like hunger and aggression. When we laugh, we are engaging in a ritual far older than language itself. The act is a full-body event. The diaphragm spasms, producing those distinctive staccato sounds. Endorphins flood the system, acting as natural painkillers. But perhaps most importantly, the cuddle hormone, oxytocin, is released, fostering feelings of trust and bonding. This isn't merely a pleasurable side effect. It is the core function. Laughter is a biological synchronizer. In a group, heart rates can begin to align, breathing patterns fall into step. It creates a temporary, physiological unity, a silent proclamation that within this circle, we are safe. We are one. So when we laugh harder with others, our brain is simply fulfilling its ancient programming, strengthening the social fabric, one chuckle at a time. Is our laughter then less about the joke and more about the tribe? Archaeology and anthropology offer a glimpse into why this bonding mechanism was so crucial for survival. For our early Homo sapiens ancestors, life was a precarious balance between cooperation and conflict. In such a world, a sudden, open-mouthed baring of teeth could be a prelude to violence. Laughter may have evolved as the peaceful counterpart to the snarl, a disarmament signal. Imagine a scene around a fire after a tense encounter with a rival group. One individual makes a clumsy gesture, a playful mimicry of the earlier fear. A laugh erupts. It's contagious. The tension dissolves. This shared laughter was a social green light, a non-verbal contract that said, "The threat has passed. Among you, I am not a predator, and you are not my prey." It was a way to differentiate us from them, to smooth over minor conflicts, and to reinforce the hierarchies and alliances that held the group together. The sound of collective laughter was the sound of a community affirming its existence. Could the survival of our species have hinged in part on our ability to share a joke? Modern society, for all its complexity, still runs on this ancient circuitry. The phenomenon of the canned laugh track in television sitcoms is a perfect, if artificial, testament to this. Producers discovered long ago that audiences rate a show as funnier when accompanied by the sound of others laughing. It's a clever hack, a way of tricking our solitary brains into believing we are part of a laughing tribe. The artificial chorus provides the social permission we seem to crave, giving us the cue that it's time to let go, to join in. From comedy clubs where laughter ripples through the crowd like a wave to the shared giggles that break the ice in an awkward meeting, the principle remains the same. Laughter is a social contagion designed to spread. It builds bridges between strangers and fortifies the bonds between friends. But if its primary purpose is connection, a question inevitably arises about the nature of that connection. Is the bond it forges always one of pure egalitarian camaraderie? Or can this powerful tool be wielded, consciously or not, for more strategic ends? This leads us to a compelling counterpoint. If laughter is a social adhesive, its stickiness might have profound implications in the most fundamental of human dramas: reproduction. The social dynamics of laughter are rarely symmetrical. Observe any social gathering, and a pattern often emerges. Men tend to be the primary instigators of humor, the ones telling the stories and cracking the jokes. Women, often, are the more frequent laughers. This is a cross-cultural phenomenon, observed from coffee shops to corporate boardrooms. Is this simply a social convention, or could it be a dim echo of an ancient evolutionary dance? Could female laughter be more than just a signal of amusement? Could it be a subtle, powerful selector? The sound of a woman's laughter has been studied, dissected, and prized across cultures. It is often described as more melodic, more infectious than male laughter. But what if its value goes beyond the aesthetic? In the context of evolutionary psychology, laughter can be seen as a costly signal. It requires a certain letting down of one's guard, an openness that signals trust. When a woman laughs at a man's humor, she is providing a valuable social reward. She is signaling approval, accessibility, and interest. This dynamic suggests a fascinating possibility: that humor production in males and laughter response in females became intertwined in a complex courtship ritual. The male, by demonstrating wit and intelligence through humor, showcases his cognitive fitness, his ability to think creatively, to navigate social complexities, to be an engaging partner. The female, through her laughter, exercises choice. Her laugh is the reward, the indicator of selection. It is a silent, powerful verdict. The man who cannot elicit a laugh may find himself at a distinct disadvantage. So, was the prehistoric courtship ground not just a place of physical displays of strength, but also an arena for wit? Was the ability to provoke, Genuine laughter in a potential mate as important as the ability to hunt? This perspective casts the social nature of laughter in a new, more complex light. It is not merely a tool for group cohesion, but potentially a mechanism for sexual selection operating within that group. The lone individual laughing at a sunset needs no such signal. The laughter is pure, uncalculated response. But in the social sphere, every chuckle can carry an invisible weight. The laugh that bonds a group of friends can also, simultaneously, be a quiet assessment of a potential partner. It is a tool that can build egalitarian communities, yet it can also reinforce the subtle negotiations of attraction and status. The same force that dissolves hierarchies through collective joy might also be the very instrument that establishes them in the intimate dance of pairing. So, is laughter the great social equalizer, or is it one of the most subtle and persuasive instruments of choice we possess? And if it is a key to connection, does the nature of that connection change when we realize the key might also be a lock, waiting for the right hand to turn it? Of course. Here is a 3,000-word piece crafted to your exact specifications. The sound of a woman's laughter has, across cultures and centuries, been meticulously catalogued by poets and suitors alike. It is described as a melody, a chime, a cascade of bells, a sound that can disarm tension, invite intimacy, and signal approval. We are told it is charming, alluring, even seductive. We accept this as a cultural truth, a social nicety polished over generations. But what if this appreciation is written in a far older, more fundamental language? What if the allure of a woman's laugh is not merely a social construct, but an echo from the deep time of our evolution, a subtle yet powerful instrument in the ancient and relentless theater of reproductive selection? To understand laughter, we must first strip it of its modern connotations of comedy and entertainment. We must imagine it not in a crowded theater, but in a small, vulnerable band of early humans gathered around a flickering fire. The night is vast and filled with unseen threats. In this context, a vocalization like laughter is costly. It betrays location, consumes energy. For such a signal to persist and become universal, its benefits must have outweighed its risks enormously. Biologically, the act of laughing is a profound physiological event. It begins as a series of sharp exhalations, forcing the diaphragm to contract, increasing heart rate, and sending a surge of oxygen-rich blood throughout the body. The facial muscles relax, the eyes crinkle, the cheeks flush with color. This entire symphony of physical responses broadcasts a clear, immediate message of vitality. More importantly, laughter triggers the release of a cocktail of neurochemicals, most notably endorphins, which act as natural painkillers, and oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone. From an evolutionary standpoint, a person who is laughing is signaling, "I am not a threat. I am safe. My body is healthy. My mind is at ease. And in this moment, the world is not a place of danger." When a woman laughs, therefore, she is not just expressing amusement, she is displaying a state of being that is highly desirable for survival and, crucially, for nurturing offspring. Her relaxed state indicates a lack of chronic stress, a robust immune system, and a temperament conducive to the long-demanding task of raising children. Could it be that the pleasing quality we attribute to a woman's laugh is, in fact, our subconscious recognition of this deep-seated health certificate? The archaeological record, while silent on the sound of laughter itself, offers compelling indirect evidence for its value. In the harsh realities of prehistoric life, where survival was a daily struggle, a sense of humor, the cognitive engine behind laughter, would have been a significant asset. It functions as a psychological coping mechanism, a way to reframe adversity and reduce group tension. A woman capable of finding lightness in difficulty, of using wit to diffuse conflict, would have been a cornerstone of group cohesion. This mental resilience translates directly into better childcare. A less stressed mother is more attentive, more patient, and more likely to foster a secure environment for her children. Therefore, when early men were selecting partners, they may have been unconsciously drawn to those who displayed this capacity for joy and resilience. The laugh, then, becomes an audible indicator of psychological fitness. It is a signal that says, I have the emotional strength to weather the storms of life and provide a nurturing cradle for the next generation. This preference would have been naturally selected for over millennia, hardwiring an appreciation for a woman's laughter into the male psyche, not as a mere aesthetic preference, but as a pragmatic assessment of reproductive suitability. Is our modern attraction to a joyful disposition simply the ghost of this ancient, practical calculus? This deep biological undercurrent continues to flow powerfully into the modern world, shaping our interactions in ways we scarcely acknowledge. Contemporary studies in social psychology and dating dynamics consistently reveal a fascinating asymmetry. In heterosexual flirtation, a woman's laughter is one of the most potent currencies. Research has shown that when a woman laughs at a man's jokes, he consistently rates her as more attractive and the interaction as more successful. Her laughter is a form of social reward, a validation of his efforts to amuse and provide. It opens doors to intimacy and signals receptivity. Conversely, men are far more often the producers of humor, the jesters vying for the approving laughter of their female audience. This is a social script we all know well. The man telling the story, pitching his voice for comedic effect, while the woman listens, her smile broadening until it erupts into that very laughter he is working to elicit. This dynamic suggests that laughter is not a passive reaction, but an active, selective tool. A woman's laugh, in this light, is not simply given, it is bestowed. It is a gift of attention and approval, a signal that she is engaged and, on some fundamental level, impressed. But why this specific division of roles? If laughter is such a primal signal of fitness and availability, why is the man not the one laughing to display his own qualities of health and safety? Here we encounter the compelling counterpoint that complicates our simple narrative. If laughter is purely a signal of reproductive fitness, why is the script so often flipped, with men performing and women evaluating? This paradox hints at a more intricate evolutionary dance. One theory proposes that while both sexes use laughter, its function diverges based on differing reproductive strategies. For a man whose potential reproductive success is theoretically limited only by his access to fertile partners, the imperative is to display value, to stand out from the crowd of competitors. His humor, his stories, his wit. These are his displays, the equivalent of a peacock's tail, demonstrating intelligence, creativity, and social confidence. The act of making a woman laugh is a demonstration of cognitive fitness. For a woman whose investment in reproduction is immensely higher through pregnancy, childbirth, and nurturing, the imperative is not to attract the most mates, but to select the best possible mate from the suitors available. Her role, therefore, becomes that of a discerning critic. Her laughter is not just a signal of her own fitness, but a calibrated response to his display. It is the reward she offers for a performance that meets her standards. When she laughs, she is not merely expressing amusement, she is providing feedback. It is a tool of choice. A withheld laugh can be a powerful deterrent, while a genuine, unreserved laugh can be a green light. In this sophisticated exchange, the man's performance is the question, and the woman's laughter is the answer. But does this mean the performance is a deception and the laughter a mere manipulation? To view it as such would be to miss the profound symbiosis at play. This is not a cold, calculated transaction, but a deeply intuitive conversation shaped by eons of natural selection. The man's drive to be funny and the woman's propensity to laugh are two sides of the same evolutionary coin. His performance is an honest signal, or at least an attempt at one, of his genetic quality and his ability to provide resources and protection. A truly dull-witted or socially inept individual would struggle to consistently generate appreciated humor. Her laughter, in turn, is an honest signal of her interest and her assessment of his quality. It is a co-evolved duet, where both parties are playing a part in a ritual that facilitates pairing. This dynamic transforms social interaction from a simple exchange of words into a subtle, high-stakes arena of mutual assessment. The laughter that rings out in a cozy bar or across a dinner table is, in a sense, a modern reverberation of a very old game. It is the sound of a selective process in action, a process that has, for thousands of generations, shaped the very nature of human connection.
So, in the intricate economy of attraction, is a woman's laughter the most valuable currency? And if so, what does its exchange truly purchase? This leads us to a more profound and perhaps unsettling observation. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this entire dynamic is not the laughter itself, but the selection behind it. When a man makes a joke, any woman within earshot has a choice: to laugh, to smile politely, or to remain stoic. That choice is a moment of immense power. It is a silent, instantaneous evaluation. Is this man's humor intelligent? Is it kind? Does it align with her own worldview and sensibilities? Her laughter, when it comes, is a seal of approval. It says, "I see you. I
Understand you, and I find your particular expression of the world pleasing." This makes female laughter an incredibly sophisticated filtering mechanism. It does not simply select for men who are funny, it selects for men whose type of funny resonates with her own unique psyche. A woman with a sharp, sarcastic wit may laugh at a cynical observation, thereby selecting for a partner with a similar defensive outlook on life. A woman with a playful, absurdist sense of humor will reward silliness, selecting for a partner who values lightheartedness. In this way, laughter becomes a force of assortative mating, drawing together individuals with compatible dispositions. The laugh is the sound of a match being struck. But if her laughter is the selector, what does it say about the man who is driven to provoke it, to become a slave to the sound of that approval? The performance demanded of men in this ancient dance carries its own weight and vulnerability. The pressure to be the entertainer, the constant generator of amusement, is a heavy mantle to wear. It requires a continuous output of cognitive energy, a perpetual risk of failure. A joke that falls flat is not just a social misstep. In the primal theater of attraction, it feels like a rejection of one's offered value. This dynamic can create a peculiar anxiety, where a man's sense of self-worth becomes entangled with his ability to elicit that specific, rewarding sound. He learns to read the nuances of her laughter, the genuine belly laugh versus the polite titter, as a precise barometer of his success or failure. This transforms the interaction from a mutual exploration into a performance review. Is the man, in his quest to win a woman's laughter, truly displaying his strength? Or is he revealing a deep-seated vulnerability, an existential need for her validation that places the ultimate power squarely in her hands? And if power lies with the one who judges, not the one who performs, have we misunderstood the fundamental hierarchy of this exchange altogether? So we find ourselves at a crossroads of interpretations. The woman's laugh can be seen as a signal of her own fitness, a tool of selective choice, and a reward for a successful performance. The man's humor can be seen as a display of his fitness, an attempt to gain approval, and a response to the selective pressure exerted by female choice. This is not a simple chain of cause and effect, but a feedback loop that has shaped both sexes over millennia. The sound of laughter, therefore, is anything but simple. It is a layered, complex vocalization that carries within it the history of our survival, the intricacies of our mating strategies, and the subtle power dynamics of our social lives. It is both a cradle of connection and a club of competition, a sound that can build intimacy or reinforce hierarchy. We have peeled back the first layer, revealing a biological imperative and an evolutionary dance. But this revelation only leads to a deeper, more philosophical quandary. If our most spontaneous expressions of joy are also instruments of an ancient biological calculus, then where does the authentic self truly reside? In the laughter or in the silent choice that precedes it? The room hums with the easy chaos of a social gathering. Glasses clink, voices overlap in a warm cacophony. In the center of one such circle, a man tells a story. His hands carve shapes in the air, his voice dips and rises, and the punchline lands with the precision of a master craftsman. A wave of genuine laughter erupts, and at its crest, his eyes flicker, almost imperceptibly, towards a woman leaning against the bookshelf. She smiles, a quiet, closed-lipped curve that seems to hold more than just amusement. Emboldened, another man in the circle seizes the social momentum, launching into his own anecdote, a friendly, unspoken competition now crackling in the air. The first man counters with a wittier observation. They are jousting, but their weapons are wit and timing, their armor a veneer of casual banter. And the woman? She observes. She laughs at the second man's story, but it's a different quality of laugh, softer, more polite. Her most resonant laughter, the kind that reaches her eyes, she reserves seemingly for the first storyteller. This subtle economy of amusement, this selective distribution of a smile, is not mere social politeness. It is a silent, ancient dialogue, a dance of signals written in the very code of our being. To understand this dance, we must first listen to the chemistry of the laugh itself. Laughter is a startlingly physical event, a series of sharp, staccato exhalations that hijack our respiratory system. But its origin is a complex fireworks display in the brain. When a story lands, when incongruity resolves into humor, it triggers a release of dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway, the brain's reward circuit. This is the same neurochemical currency associated with food, sex, and social bonding. The person who crafts the joke experiences this rush, a reward for successful social connection. The audience, in turn, receives a similar, if slightly secondary, dose of pleasure. But the storyteller's reward is twofold: the internal chemical prize and the external social capital. The ability to consistently generate this response is not a trivial party trick. It is a potent signal of cognitive fitness. It requires quick pattern recognition, the mental agility to connect disparate ideas, a sophisticated theory of mind to predict what others will find funny, and the verbal dexterity to deliver it with timing. In the silent calculus of attraction, a good sense of humor is often shorthand for a good mind, and by extension, good genes. The woman's selective laughter, then, is not just a reaction, it is a measurement. It is her unconscious assessment of the signal being sent. Is this wit a flash of genuine intelligence or merely a rehearsed routine? Is the confidence behind it rooted in competence or arrogance? Her laughter, or the specific quality of it, is her feedback in this ancient test. This social jousting, this competition through comedy, finds its roots deep in our past, long before bars and bookshelves. Imagine a different scene, not of warm lighting and polished floors, but of flickering firelight against a cave wall. The air is thick with the smells of earth and cooked meat. Survival is the daily agenda, and within that, the imperative to reproduce. Physical dominance is one path, but it is a risky one, fraught with injury and social destabilization. Humor offers a parallel path, a non-violent arena for displaying fitness. The individual who can lighten the mood, who can ease tension with a well-timed jest, demonstrates a different kind of strength, social intelligence. They become the glue of the group, a valuable asset. This is not so different from the elaborate, energy-intensive courtship displays seen in the animal kingdom. The bowerbird's meticulously decorated nest, the songbird's complex melody. These are costly signals, proving to a potential mate that the individual has energy to spare on something beyond mere survival. The human joke, the witty remark, serves a similar function. It says, "I am not just surviving, I am thriving. I have the cognitive surplus to play with ideas, to reshape reality for our shared delight." The man who wins the laughter of the group, and particularly the focused appreciation of a desired partner, is effectively performing a cognitive dance. The other men who jump in are not merely interrupting, they are attempting to hijack that signal, to redirect the social reward towards themselves. The woman, by choosing whose humor truly resonates with her, is playing the role of the selective force, the quiet arbiter of this evolutionary stage. In the modern world, these ancient currents still run strong beneath the surface of our interactions. Study after study in social psychology confirms what our intuitions already know. Men who are perceived as humorous are consistently rated as more attractive, more intelligent, and more desirable as long-term partners. This is fascinating because humor is not directly linked to provisioning or protection, the traditional pillars of mate selection. Instead, It seems to act as a proxy for a suite of desirable traits: creativity, resilience, and the ability to navigate the complexities of social life. A man who can make a woman laugh is often seen as someone who can put her at ease, who can reframe adversity, who can be a companion in the truest sense of the word. Conversely, a woman's laughter in these contexts is rarely a passive reception. It is an active, powerful social tool. Her genuine, unforced laugh is a green light, a signal of interest and approval. It is a form of consent, not yet to anything physical, but to the continued pursuit, to the possibility of connection. In the economy of attraction, her laughter is a high-value currency, and she spends it wisely. This selective laughter is her way of shaping the social field, of encouraging the traits she finds most appealing and gently discouraging those she does not, all without uttering a single word of direct critique. But if this intricate dance of joke-telling and selective laughter is merely a sophisticated mechanism for mate selection, a behavioral adaptation honed by sexual selection, why does it persist so powerfully in contexts far removed from reproduction? Why does laughter echo through the sterile halls of a hospice where a patient shares a dark joke with a weary nurse? Why does it rise from a prison yard, or a refugee camp, or the exhausted silence after a funeral? If its sole purpose was to signal genetic fitness to a potential partner, it would be as redundant in these settings as a peacock's tail in a pitch-black room. The persistence of laughter in the face of absolute adversity suggests a function far deeper, more resilient, and ultimately more profound. It is in these spaces of profound suffering that laughter reveals its second, more astonishing nature. It becomes, to borrow a biological term, a psychological antibody. An antibody is a protein produced by the immune system to recognize and neutralize pathogens. It doesn't prevent the infection from happening. It swarms the invader after the fact, limiting its damage and allowing the body to heal. Laughter operates in a similar way against the pathogens of despair, trauma, and absurdity. It does not deny the pain, it does not erase the loss. Instead, it allows the human spirit to confront the unbearable and, for a fleeting moment, assert a form of sovereignty over it. The person who laughs in the face of tragedy is not forgetting their grief. They are performing a radical act of cognitive defiance. They are finding a pattern, however twisted, in the chaos. They are saying, "This horror is real, but my ability to perceive its absurdity is also real. You have not completely broken me." This is the laughter that transcends the transactional dynamics of the social circle. It is the laughter of survivors, a sound that is simultaneously heartbreaking and life-affirming. It is the glue that holds communities together through shared trauma, a signal not of genetic fitness, but of immense psychological resilience. It is the first line of defense for a mind determined to stay sane in an insane situation. So perhaps the quiet woman in that social circle, the one who measures her laughter with such intuitive care, is sensing something beyond mere intelligence or social skill. Perhaps she is unconsciously gauging a man's capacity for this deeper, more essential form of humor, the kind that isn't just for winning social points but for weathering life's inevitable storms, the kind that hints not just at good genes but at a robust soul. And if the currency of laughter can be spent so selectively in the gentle arena of flirtation, what does it mean when it is spent so lavishly, so defiantly in the face of annihilation? Does this mean that our need to laugh ultimately is greater than our need to reproduce? In the crushing silence of the camp, a space where hope seemed not just absent but systematically erased, a sound would sometimes escape. It was not a sob. It was a joke, a whispered anecdote, a dark, twisted observation about the absurdity of their existence. And around him, a small circle of emaciated faces would crack. They would laugh, not a laugh of joy, not a laugh of mirth, but a ragged, desperate exhalation. It was an act of defiance, a biological rebellion against the machinery of dehumanization. This laughter was not a denial of the horror. It was a weapon wielded against it. In that moment, the laugh was not an escape from reality, but a profound and stubborn insistence on a reality that included their own enduring humanity. It was the sound of a soul refusing to be finalized, This survival laughter is a deeply encoded biological response, a physiological revolt against absolute despair. When the body is pushed to its absolute limit, subjected to relentless stress, it enters a state of hyperarousal. The nervous system is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, hormones designed for short-term fight or flight, but which become corrosive in a sustained deluge. They erode the immune system, shatter cognitive function, and pave the road to a catatonic surrender. Yet the act of laughing, even when forced, initiates a powerful counteroffensive. The diaphragm convulses, forcing a rapid exchange of oxygen. The brain, tricked by the physical mechanics of the gesture, releases a cascade of endorphins, the body's native painkillers, and dopamine, a messenger of reward. It is an internal alchemy, transforming the leaden weight of terror into a fleeting chemical respite. This is not about happiness. It is about homeostasis. The laugh, in this context, is a physiological bulwark, a way for the organism to forcibly recalibrate its own internal chemistry, to snatch a moment of metabolic peace from the jaws of an existential storm. Could it be that this primal biological spasm is the foundation upon which our most complex cultural edifices are built? If we listen closely to the echoes from our deepest past, we might hear the faint sound of similar laughter around ancient, struggling fires. Archaeologists piecing together the lives of our ancestors during periods of climatic upheaval, famine, or tribal conflict find evidence not just of survival, but of something more. Among the tools for hunting and the remnants of shelter, we find objects whose purpose seems to be purely expressive, carved figures with exaggerated features, cave paintings depicting scenes that could be read as comic mishaps. In times of extreme scarcity, when every calorie expended had to justify its use, why would energy be diverted to create what we might call early comedy? It suggests that this creating of laughter was not a luxury, but a necessity. It was a ritualistic, collective behavior, a way to bind a group together under unimaginable pressure. The shared laugh would have lowered social tensions, reinforced social bonds, and created a momentary equality in the face of a common threat. It was a social technology as vital as the spear or the fire drill. The tribe that laughed together, it seems, endured together. Does this ancient communal function of humor hint at its true power, a power that transcends the individual and stitches together the very fabric of society? This thread continues, unbroken, into the bleakest landscapes of the modern world. In prisons, in refugee camps, in the hollowed-out aftermath of natural and man-made disasters, observers consistently note the persistent, stubborn presence of humor. It is often dark, gallows humor, a currency of the desperate. It is the joke about the guards, the satire about the rations, the ironic commentary on the absurd bureaucracy of suffering. This laughter is described as the last remaining sign of humanity, a flickering signal that the person within has not been completely extinguished. It is a mechanism for maintaining morale, for creating tiny pockets of resistance and solidarity. It allows individuals to distance themselves from their torment, if only for a second, to look at their situation from the outside and, by laughing at it, assert a sliver of control. In these environments, laughter becomes the ultimate affirmation of the human spirit. It declares that while the body can be imprisoned and broken, the mind can still exercise the freedom to reframe, to mock, to survive. But this forces a difficult, almost uncomfortable question. When laughter is stripped of joy and reduced to a pure survival tool, does it risk becoming hollow? Is it still the same phenomenon? So we arrive at a paradox. Is laughter, in its most raw and desperate form, merely a refined biological instinct, a clever trick of the nervous system to prevent its own collapse? Or, in that very moment of choosing to laugh in the face of the abyss, does it become something more? Does the survival laughter of the camp, the tribe, and the prisoner represent not a reduction of humor, but its ultimate elevation? It is a tool for survival, yes, but perhaps it is the tool that allows for the survival of the very things that make survival worthwhile: community, identity, and the stubborn, unkillable capacity for meaning-making. The laugh is both the cradle of our humanity and the club we use to defend it. Perhaps the critical evolutionary leap was not laughter itself, but the moment our ancestors began to consciously craft the scenarios that would elicit it. The moment one hominid decided to imitate the stumbling gait of a predator or exaggerate the severity of the tribe's leader, a new dimension was unlocked. This was no longer just a reactive laugh of relief, it was a proactive laugh of creation. In that act of staging a scene for comedy, they were not just responding to the world, they were beginning to represent it. They were creating a shared narrative, a space separate from the brutal immediacy of survival, where the group could see itself reflected, and in seeing itself, could understand itself. This was the birth of culture, the first tentative step from mere existence toward a life of shared symbols and stories. If laughter is the foundation, then is the conscious creation of comedy the moment we began to build the house of civilization upon it. And if so, what does it mean that this house, built on a foundation of survival laughter, eventually developed rooms for satire, for parody, for the subversive power of the clown who speaks truth to the king? Does the journey from the desperate chuckle in the dark to the polished satire of a modern stage trace the arc of humanity's most profound revolution? Imagine a scene, painted not in the pigments of ochre and charcoal on a cave wall, but in the silent theater of the mind. A small group of early humans huddle around a fire. One of them, perhaps a storyteller, a nascent actor, suddenly stumbles, trips over an imaginary log, and tumbles into a pantomime of exaggerated flailing. A moment of silence hangs, and then it breaks. Not the spontaneous, reflexive laugh of being tickled, but a ripple of shared, understanding laughter. This is no longer a mere biological spasm. In that flickering firelight, laughter has been captured, distilled, and weaponized as a tool. It has become a medium. This deliberate act, the reenactment of a humorous situation, marks a quiet revolution in the story of our species. It signifies a cognitive leap of extraordinary proportions. To stage a fall, one must first possess a theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states to others. The performer must anticipate the audience's perspective, predict their reaction, and understand that the simulation of misfortune can be a source of joy, not alarm. This requires imagination, interpretation, and coordination, the very pinnacle of evolutionary cognition. Laughter, once a simple signal of safety among primates, was being woven into the fabric of culture, becoming the first thread of a narrative tapestry we would later call comedy. The evidence of this transformation is etched in stone, if we know where to look. The famous cave paintings of Lascaux and Altamira are often celebrated for their majestic depictions of bison and stags, testaments to the hunt and survival. But look closer. Among these grand tableaux, there are smaller, more enigmatic scenes. A human figure with an absurdly exaggerated feature, a depiction of a hunter comically missing his target, or a group engaged in what appears to be a ritual of playful mockery. These are not just records of life. They are records of how life was perceived, interpreted, and, crucially, lampooned. Our ancestors were not just documenting their world. They were using laughter to tell stories about it, to educate the young about social faux pas, and perhaps to offer a subtle critique of the tribal chief without direct confrontation. The cave wall became the first comedy club, and the firelight, the first spotlight. This cultural co-opting of laughter accelerated, evolving through the satirical plays of Aristophanes in ancient Greece, which used humor as a sharp political scalpel, to the court jesters of the Middle Ages, who alone possessed the license to speak painful truths to power, shielded by the guise of folly. In each era, laughter shed another layer of its primal skin. It was no longer just a reflex. It became a complex communication system, a social glue, and a formidable political force. It could unite a community against a common enemy or dismantle a tyrant's ego with a perfectly timed joke. Then came the 20th century, and the revolution was televised, filmed, and broadcast. The invention of cinema and television democratized and industrialized comedy. The silent, physical genius of Charlie Chaplin's Tramp navigating the crushing gears of industrialization with defiant grace, spoke a universal language of resilience. The rapid-fire verbal wit of screwball comedies celebrated intellectual agility. Sitcoms created artificial families whose weekly tribulations, resolved in 22 minutes, provided a comforting rhythm to modern life. Each format was a new vessel for the ancient impulse, proving that laughter had become our most versatile and potent artistic material. But every revolution carries the seeds of a counter-revolution. In our hyper-connected digital age, where laughter is formatted into emoji, condensed into memes, and quantified by a haha button click, a profound question whispers beneath the cacophony. Are we still truly laughing? The digital laugh is instantaneous, global, and often anonymous. It can be a weapon of mass ridicule or a token of superficial agreement. We scroll through a feed, tap a laughing emoji on a darkly humorous meme about existential dread, and continue scrolling, our faces neutral. The visceral, communal, full-bodied experience of shared laughter, the kind that makes your stomach ache and tears stream down your face, feels increasingly rare, replaced by a silent, cerebral acknowledgement of something being funny. Has the symbol of laughter begun to eclipse the experience itself? We are, it seems, entering a new epoch, one where laughter is decoupling from sound and becoming a pure propagating symbol. It is no longer just an expression, but a unit of cultural transmission, a virus of meaning. This is not necessarily a degradation, but an evolution, a mutation forced by a new environment. The laugh is adapting to survive in the digital ecosystem. But in this adaptation, what parts of its ancient soul are being left behind? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? If a person laughs alone at a screen, their body silent, is it still the same laugh that bonded our ancestors around the fire? The sound may have faded, but the signal is stronger than ever, racing at the speed of light across fiber optic cables. And this new, potent signal seems to carry a curious bias, a disturbing efficiency. Why is it that the cynical laugh, the snarky comment, the meme that derives its humor from the subtle humiliation of another, appears to travel faster and further through our digital networks than the laugh born of pure, wholesome joy? Does our modern brain, forged in the competitive fires of social status, possess a hidden preference for the feeling of superiority over genuine connection, making the sneer a more potent fuel for propagation than the smile? A video clip of a politician's gaffe, expertly edited with a sarcastic caption, rockets across the internet, amassing millions of views and shares in a matter of hours. Meanwhile, a genuinely funny, good-natured sketch by a talented comedian languishes in obscurity, its view count barely ticking past a few hundred. This digital asymmetry is a familiar, almost mundane, feature of our online landscape. But it begs a question that echoes far beyond the algorithms. Why does the cynical laugh, the sneer, the sardonic chuckle seem to travel faster and farther than the laugh of pure shared joy? Is it merely a quirk of our hyper-connected age, or does it point to something deeper, something wired into the very architecture of our social brains, a primal preference for the poison-tipped arrow of scorn over the open hand of mirth? The answer perhaps begins not in the server farms of Silicon Valley, but in the ancient circuitry of the human mind. From a biological standpoint, laughter is rarely a simple signal. The laugh that erupts from a shared joke among friends is a different creature altogether from the sharp, derisive bark aimed at a rival's misfortune. Neurologically, sarcastic or mocking laughter is deeply entangled with our sense of social standing. When we laugh at someone, it often triggers a subtle, potent release of dopamine, the brain's chemical reward. This isn't the warm glow of connection, it's the crisp satisfaction of a minor victory. It's the feeling of having successfully navigated a social hierarchy, of asserting dominance without the messy, physical risk of an actual confrontation. We are, in that moment, the clever observer in the crowd, not the fool on the stage. This neurological payoff is immediate and reinforcing, a quick hit of social validation that our brains are all too eager to seek out and repeat. The laughter of mockery is a club, lightweight and easy to wield, that lets us feel strong. The laughter of joy, by contrast, is a cradle. It requires a certain vulnerability, a willingness to be disarmed, to let down our guards together. In a world that often feels like a competition, which is the safer, more immediately gratifying bet? This biological impulse finds a powerful echo in our deep past. For our ancestors, living in small, tightly knit bands where social cohesion was a matter of survival, laughter served a crucial regulatory function. Anthropologists suggest that ridicule was a primary tool for enforcing group norms. When an individual violated a shared rule, hoarding resources, shirking duties, behaving selfishly, the group's collective laughter acted as a form of nonviolent punishment. It was a social corrective, a way to shame the transgressor back into line without resorting to ostracism or violence which could weaken the tribe. The sting of being laughed at was a powerful deterrent. In this light, our attraction to mocking content isn't just a modern pathology, it's an evolutionary relic. We are the descendants of those who used laughter to maintain order, and we inherit a brain that is exquisitely tuned to both deliver and appreciate this kind of social judgment. The viral sneer of today is the digital descendant of the communal scoff that once kept a hunter-gatherer band from fracturing. But if this mechanism was designed for small, intimate groups where everyone knew the rules and the players, what happens when it is unleashed upon a global, anonymous stage where context collapses and the laughter can be heard by millions but felt by no one? Our modern social ecosystems, particularly online, have become a perfect storm for this ancient predisposition. Platforms are engineered for engagement, and few things are more engaging than the friction of social comparison and the heat of mild outrage. Sarcastic memes, satirical posts, and cynical shitposting thrive because they perform a dual function. First, they offer a cheap and easy way to signal in-group membership. Sharing a piece of mocking content is a way of saying, I am clever enough to see through the nonsense, and I am on the side of those who see it too. It's a low-effort badge of intellectual superiority. Second, it allows us to critique and judge others from a position of perfect safety. We can participate in the social punishment of a public figure or a perceived outsider without any of the risks or responsibilities that would accompany a face-to-face confrontation. The digital mob, armed with laughing emojis and cutting comments, can enact a form of tribal justice that feels righteous and empowering. The wholesome, inclusive laugh, the one that seeks to build bridges rather than police boundaries, demands more of us. It requires empathy and a certain generosity of spirit. It doesn't create the same sharp us versus them dynamic that algorithms so efficiently amplify. So, we click share on the sneer, and the ancient circuitry fires, rewarding us for a social battle won in the comfort of our own homes. But in this grand global theater, who is truly being punished, and who is ultimately defining the norms? This is where the seemingly innocent mechanics of social bonding curdle into something more sinister. For if laughter can be weaponized by the crowd, can it not also be weaponized by those who seek to control the crowd? The very qualities that make mocking laughter a potent tool for social cohesion in a small group, its ability to enforce norms, to create in-groups and out-groups, to punish and shame, make it a perfect instrument for power. The history of propaganda is not merely a history of controlling what people fear, but also of dictating what they find laughable. A dictator does not only ban dissent, he often co-opts the language of ridicule, directing the collective scorn of the populace toward his enemies, real or imagined. The court jester was never truly free. His barbs were permitted only when they served the king's interest, often by mocking those the king wished to diminish. The laughter of the crowd, in such a scenario, is not a genuine expression of judgment, but a performance of loyalty, a synchronized vituperation choreographed from above. The question then shifts from why. We laugh derisively to who gets to choose the target. When the power to point the finger and unleash the collective sneer is concentrated in few hands, does laughter cease to be a tool of social regulation and become simply another chain? And so we arrive at a precarious ledge, looking out at a landscape where the very thing that might have once bound our tribes together now threatens to tear our wider world apart. The cynical laugh spreads faster because it taps into primal, efficient circuits of social navigation and self-aggrandizement. It is a low-energy transaction for a high neurological reward. But this efficiency comes at a cost. It erodes the space for nuance, for forgiveness, for the more demanding but more profound laughter that connects rather than divides. We are left to wonder if our digital agoras are increasingly dominated by the laughter of the mob, a laughter that can be so easily manipulated and directed. What does that mean for the future of our shared reality? Is the true tyranny not the silencing of dissent, but the orchestration of ridicule? And in the end, when the last cynical laugh echoes across the network, what, precisely, will have been the joke? The room is vast, opulent, and meticulously controlled. On a brightly lit stage, a comedian delivers a well-rehearsed line, a gentle jab at the minor frustrations of daily life. The camera pans to the audience, a sea of uniformed officials and carefully selected citizens, their faces creasing into synchronized laughter. At the center of it all, watching from a position of honor, is the nation's leader. A faint, approving smile plays on his lips. This is not a scene from a satire. It is a documented reality in states where dissent is a crime. Why would a dictator, a figure whose power rests on fear and conformity, ever permit laughter, that most spontaneous and subversive of human sounds, to echo through the halls of power? The answer lies not in a sudden embrace of levity, but in a cold, calculated understanding of laughter's deep, ancient power. It is a power that can be harnessed, turning a potential weapon of rebellion into a subtle, yet potent, tool of control. Laughter, at its biological core, is a social signal. It is a complex symphony of exhaled breaths and vocalized sounds that, neuroscientists tell us, triggers the release of a cascade of neurochemicals. Endorphins flood the system, acting as natural painkillers, while oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, washes through our brains. This chemical cocktail does more than just make us feel good. It forges a temporary bond, a sense of shared experience and mutual safety. In a tribe of early humans, a shared laugh around a fire after a successful hunt would have strengthened the social glue, reinforcing the connections essential for survival. A dictator, in a twisted mimicry of this ancient tribal dynamic, seeks to exploit this very mechanism. By placing himself at the center of a sanctioned comedic event, he attempts to trigger this primitive chemical affiliation. The laughter directed at a state-approved joke, even if it is about potholes rather than politics, creates a fleeting sense of collective ease. The leader is no longer just a distant, fearsome authority figure. For a moment, he becomes part of the in-group, sharing in the communal release. He is not the target of the tension, but the benevolent overseer of its relief. Is this the ultimate perversion of a natural social bond, using the chemistry of connection to reinforce the architecture of control? This co-opting of laughter is not a modern invention. If we dig into the archaeological record of power, we find a consistent, almost archetypal figure, the court jester. In the palaces of medieval Europe and the courts of ancient Asia, the fool was granted a unique and precarious license. He could mock, jest, and speak truths that would mean death for any other courtier. His costume, the motley, the cap and bells, was a uniform of exception, a visual signal that his words were not to be taken as serious challenge. The king tolerated the jester's barbs because they served a vital function. They acted as a pressure valve, allowing minor frustrations and unspoken anxieties within the court to be vented in a harmless, ritualized manner. The laughter that followed the jester's satire was a form of controlled catharsis. It gave the illusion of free speech while carefully circumscribing its boundaries. The moment the jester's mockery struck too close to the core of the king's legitimacy or vulnerability, the laughter would cease, and the privilege could be violently revoked. The court jester was not a revolutionary. He was a safety mechanism, a domesticated form of criticism that ultimately reinforced the very power structure it seemed to challenge. Does the presence of a critic, however sharp-tongued, actually strengthen a regime by providing the illusion of accountability? In our modern world, the court jester has been mass-produced and broadcast into every home. State-sponsored comedy shows, satirical programs, and officially approved cartoonists perform a similar function on a national scale. They create what sociologists call a safety valve for society. The regime permits, and even encourages, comedy that targets bureaucratic inefficiency, lazy officials, or the quirks of national character. This creates a powerful and deeply misleading sensation for the populace, the feeling of being allowed to speak truth to power. People laugh at the jokes, feeling a sense of relief and superiority, believing they are in on the critique. Yet, the boundaries of this critique are meticulously drawn by an invisible hand. The comedy never questions the fundamental ideology, the supreme leader's wisdom, or the legitimacy of the ruling party. It redirects public frustration away from the architects of the system and towards its minor, replaceable functionaries. By allowing this controlled mockery, the state achieves two goals. It monitors the specific grievances of the people, and it fosters a false sense of freedom that discourages the pursuit of more genuine and dangerous forms of dissent. When laughter is channeled into approved avenues, does it drain the energy needed for more substantive change? This carefully managed laughter, however, creates a society with a distorted social fabric. What happens to those who do not or cannot laugh along? The unison laughter in the television studio or the political rally is a performance of conformity. To remain silent when everyone else is laughing is to mark oneself as an outsider, a dissenter, a threat. The pressure to join in is immense, a social current that is nearly impossible to resist. For most, the laughter becomes a reflex, a survival mechanism divorced from genuine amusement. They laugh to blend in, to signal belonging, to avoid the suspicious gaze of their neighbors and the state's security apparatus. The laughter is no longer an expression of joy, but a mask of compliance. In this environment, authentic emotion is driven underground, and a collective cynicism takes root. The people become complicit in their own subjugation, performing the very rituals of approval that keep the system in place. But if everyone is only pretending, can a society built on performative conformity ever truly understand itself? And then, there are those for whom the performance is not just difficult, but impossible. Their laughter or lack thereof offers a profound and unsettling reflection on the very nature of this social ritual. There exists a group of individuals who, from a very young age, experience and express laughter in a way that is out of sync with the surrounding chorus. They are autistic children. For them, laughter is not always a seamless, socially contagious response. It can be a reaction to internal sensations, to patterns of light or sound that others do not perceive as humorous. It might be a spontaneous outburst of pure joy, untethered from a shared social cue, or it may be absent in a situation where everyone else is roaring with laughter. Their relationship with laughter is not broken. It is simply different, operating on a unique neurological and social frequency. They are the unscripted actors in the theater of social interaction, the ones who do not instinctively learn the lines of the communal play. In their unique and often misunderstood expression, could they be holding up a mirror to the unspoken rules that govern our own, more conventional laughter? What does their honest, uncalculated response reveal about the performances the rest of us have so perfectly mastered?